Good morning, folks. Good to see you. Good to be back with day 2 of the Proactive ISP Virtual Summit. I'm Jeremy Austin, Senior Product Manager here at Preseem, and I'm really glad to see so many of you back with us today. We had a really great day yesterday. We covered a lot of ground. From Ian Kahn's big picture look at where the industry is heading to some really practical on the ground conversations about getting started with AI, predicting churn, the importance of data, and ensuring that your AI usage is successful. So if you missed yesterday's sessions, you'll get an email as soon as those recordings are posted within the next couple of days. If you did join us, I hope we left you with a lot to think about and maybe a few ideas to take back to your team. One quick thing before we get into today's agenda, if you haven't already, Ian Kahn has an AI readiness survey that he shared yesterday. We're going to put that link in the chat and up on the screen here. It just takes a few minutes to fill out, and you'll get an assessment of your future readiness, calibrated across thousands of companies. Ian will be sharing the aggregated survey after the event. So the more of us who participate, the more useful that data will be to the whole community. Yeah, link should be on your screen here right now. So that's worth doing if you get a moment today between sessions or after the sessions are completed. For day 2, we're shifting the focus a little bit. We're going to focus on some more specific challenges that regional and rural providers face, which is where many of the people in this audience live every day. So we'll be hearing from Joshua Seidemann off the hop at NTCA, who'll open with an industry address on the opportunities and challenges AI presents for rural broadband providers. And from there, we'll have panels on workforce questions, AI chatbot performance, reducing truck rolls through predictive maintenance, and we'll bookend the whole summit with another forward-looking conversation about where things are headed as AI moves from chatbots to full agents. A quick reminder and housekeeping before we get started. This is an interactive summit, so let's keep the conversation lively. We'll run until 2 p.m. Eastern today with brief breaks built in as time allows. And please keep using the chat to connect with each other. That was a lot of fun yesterday. If you have questions for any of the speakers today, please drop them in the Q&A tab, and our team will bring them forward. I'll be reading them out if I can during each session segment. Every session has a Q&A segment as well, with the exception of one pre-recorded one. If you missed anything yesterday or want to share sessions with your colleagues, remember all recordings will be sent out within a couple of days. So let's make the most of day 2. It's been a fantastic so far. Let me just get right into it. I'm going to be bringing Joshua on stage here. Good morning, Joshua. Welcome.
Good morning. Well, thank you.
Josh focuses on federal regulatory issues as well as technology and market trends affecting the rural telecom industry in his role as VP Policy and Industry Innovation at the NTCA, for those who don't know, that's the Rural Broadband Association. And he leads research initiatives for Smart Rural Community, an initiative that promotes inter-industry collaboration to deploy broadband-enabled applications to improve agriculture, education, healthcare, and other sectors. Josh is also the staff liaison for the NTCA Innovation and Business Opportunity Committee and has served on industry bodies administered by the FCC, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, state governments, and university systems. Josh, it's really great to have you with us today, and I'm going to get out of here and let you do your thing, and I'll be back for the Q&A as soon as you're ready for me.
All right, thanks very much. Good morning, everyone. And I've got a couple of windows open here on my computer, and I'm watching the chat to see where everyone is logging in from. I see Potterville, California. I see Port Elizabeth, South Africa. This is really tremendous, just to have this sort of an audience and an engaged audience who's really interested in taking a look at how AI can serve just not only the rural providers, but also other sectors in rural America as well. What I'd like to do is I'm going to start off with just a brief introduction of who NTCA is for those who might not be familiar. NTCA is a trade association based just outside of Washington, D.C. We're in Arlington, Virginia, and we represent about 850 locally operated telecommunications providers in rural areas throughout the United States. We do have some in Canada. We have some in the U.S. territories as well. The predominant number of our members are spread across about 44 U.S. states, including Alaska. Our members serve about 7% of the US population and cover nearly 30% of the US landmass. The average population density in our areas is about 8 customers per square mile. Our members are fiber deployed to about 90% of their customer locations on average. So they're really deep in the broadband game. They are deep into being involved in their community, and the Smart Rural Community Program that we discussed just a moment ago that was mentioned is a program within NTCA that focuses on encouraging our members to reach out and work with their schools, their farmers, their economic development officials, their local healthcare providers, all in the aim of leveraging broadband to improve those sectors. And AI is playing a greater and greater role in those efforts. And what we did at NTCA last summer is we published a paper on AI applications for rural broadband providers, but it didn't just address the use cases for the technicians or the customer service specialists or the administrative or C-suite executives within these telecom companies. It also took a look at what the impact would be for farmers, healthcare providers, schools, and others. And I see there's a note there on the screen where you can click for the different documents and papers that we have put out here. But just jumping off, I want to frame this out with kind of taking us off the desk of the stage where we are now and kind of taking a step back into our imaginations. So imagine you are a network technician at a small broadband provider in rural America or any rural place in the world. It's 2 a.m. Your phone rings and a fiber line is down. You have 47 customers who are now in the dark. 3 of them have medical monitoring devices. Now, in the past, you drive out, troubleshoot in the dark, and you'd hope for the best. But if your network management system has already flagged that line 3 days ago as a possible failure point, it would have routed traffic around it automatically at 11 o'clock the prior evening, before the first customer lost a connection. And 7 hours later at 6 a.m., there's a work order waiting in your technician's queue with GPS coordinates and a parts list. And none of this is science fiction. It's AI. It's how AI is applied to rural broadband, and that's the way it's working today. So what we're going to do a few things this morning. We're going to demystify AI. We're going to cut through the hype, and we'll give you working understandings of what it is and how it is affecting different industries. 2, we're going to share some examples of where it's already creating value for providers like us, providers like you in telecom, but also in healthcare, education, and agriculture. 3, we're going to talk about ways to bring it home. What are the risks? What are the costs? What are the workforce implications? What are the policies that you'll need? And we're going to keep an eye on the chat and answer any of the questions that you have. What I want to start off with is the proposition that AI is not a threat. It's not a threat to rural America. It's not a threat to cities. It's not a threat to workers. It's a tool. And it might be one of the most powerful tools we have ever had. And particularly for those with an interest in serving hard-to-reach rural spaces, it might be the most powerful tool we've ever had for closing the gap between rural and urban. AI at its core is simply, I know simply is a tough word to use when talking about AI, but it's simply a platform for gathering and analyzing information to provide predictive guidance. And it helps us make decisions faster. It translates languages. It summarizes mountains of data, and it can perform calculations faster than humanly possible. The way that I like to think about AI is the same way that I think economists think about broadband or electricity. It's a general input technology. It doesn't do just one thing. It makes everything else work better. The US Government Accountability Office defines 3 stages of AI. Stage 1 is data combined with logical rules. This is early GPS, early systems that function on if-then sort of instructions. Stage 2 is machine learning, voice recognition, natural language. This is where we are today. Stage 3 is abstract thinking. We're not there yet, but we will be. Right now, we're in stage 2. AI tools are using interconnected nodes, and they're modeled on these, what they call a neural network that's intended to mimic human brain function. They recognize images, patterns, language, and by doing so, they're able to recommend decisions based on all the information that they can gather from these enormous data sets. And in AI parlance, we call this scraping the internet. The AI tools that are making headlines today are LLMs, or large language models. ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. They analyze text sequences and word relationships, and they understand grammar, language, and context across hundreds of languages. And they can process not only computer code, but natural human language as well. And they're doing it in huge amounts. In 2024, leading LLMs were processing 250,000 word equivalents in data sets that's measured in petabytes. That's 1 million gigabytes of training data. And the result is a tool that can write a customer service response, summarize a board meeting, draft a business plan in seconds. There's a lot of terms of art when we're talking about AI, so we're going to just share a few of them with you today. Prompts, that's the question you ask. Completion is the answer that the AI engine gives. Hallucination is when AI makes something up, and we're going to get to that later on. That's real. It is important. By training, I'm a lawyer, so I've got a special sensitivity to that. There's generative AI. That's AI that creates original context, so text or images or even music. And then we talked about LLMs, the large language models that are the engines behind most AI tools. So this is our world. Let's talk about what AI can do for broadband providers specifically, because it's happening now and it's not theoretical. We talked about the example we opened with, that 2 a.m. call that I described. That's AI engines monitoring traffic in real time and predicting outages before they happen. It's using sensors, it's using monitoring, it's taking a look at traffic patterns and building data sets that create an image of what we expect, and then determining what the action is when the actual occurrences deviate from those expectations. That's preventative maintenance, that's prevention. That predictive maintenance using sensors and historical data to create maintenance schedules can be a huge input, a huge benefit for telecom providers, because what that does is it enables us to fix it before it breaks. AI can also be used in the telecom industry for cybersecurity. It can detect malware. It can isolate affected systems. It can trigger remediation, and it can do this faster than any human team. It can notice anomalies in traffic patterns. It can pick up signs of a DDoS attack. It can sense an indication of a breach or an attempted breach, and it puts its virtual boots on the ground to stop it before the human technicians can do it, or sometimes before the human technicians are even aware. In terms of customer operations, chatbots can handle tier 1 support. They can troubleshoot, they can schedule tickets, it can free customer service representatives for the calls that actually need a human. And because the AI engines are so sophisticated and can discern sentiment analysis, they can also identify those customers who are capable, who are suitable, who are able to work with an AI bot on troubleshooting. One of my favorite stickers on my laptop is one that says, "Did you try turning it on and off again?" There's an awful lot of home remediation that comes up, and it's nothing more than just rebooting a router, checking a cable, checking a line. And there are some customers who, if they're guided through that, they can do it. And there are other customers who we have to hand them off to a live agent to help them. AI can also analyze customer usage patterns to create a personalized service recommendation and match subscribers to the packages they actually want. And we've all experienced this. We look at a product on Amazon and then suddenly see that similar product pop up in a sidebar to our email, or we see a Facebook post talking about it. This is all data gathering and giving customers what they want. Or Netflix or Amazon Prime. Hey, we saw that you watched this movie. Maybe you'd like to watch this one. Think about that in terms of how you operate. Think about that in terms of the service packages that you create for your customers. And then that sentiment analysis that we talked about before, tracking how customers feel about you at scale and in real time. And then for those of you who are seen as the geek squad in your community, who are running or advising other local businesses, help those companies understand how AI can work for them for strategic planning, for summarizing board discussions, or recommending consensus positions. How do you take a survey of 200 customers that has 20 questions and break that down into actionable items? Feed it into a model. Let AI crunch the numbers. Let AI manage inventory and demand forecasting for retailers or manufacturers. Let AI help companies work on marketing materials or HR screening or administrative operations. All these things can be automated. Now, every small business owner is going to ask, what's the ROI? What's it going to cost me? What do I get out of it? And that's where it can get a little bit thorny, because the right questions are, will the AI tool replace my workers, or will it free them to do more complex work? Will it improve the customer experience, or will it create friction? What are the cybersecurity implications? Is this running in the back office, or is it something that's going to touch the customer? And the reality is that there's no universal answer, but the framework is clear. We start with the use case, and then we evaluate the tool. It's not the other way around. What about education? AI has profound implications for education, especially in small schools where resources for individualized learning are limited. So let's take a look at personalized learning in rural schools. Generative AI can help educators build adaptive curricula. It can recommend both content and pacing based on individual student behaviors, preferences, and abilities. It can identify patterns, because remember, that is what AI does. It crunches numbers and identifies patterns, and it can correlate data, including classroom participation rates, to test scores. And it can lend insight into which types of learning activities and modalities are right for each student. And in a school system with 1,000 students, you might have professional staff who can break classes up into, 20 students for the advanced math and 50 students for the regular pace, and maybe another 25 students need some remedial help. But in a rural school district with 200 students in high school, having these tools to be able to create those structured patterns for maybe groups of 1 or 2 students is an incredible assist. And it can help develop those tailored lesson plans to help all students succeed. There's also a benefit for mental health counseling in school. The American School Counselor Association recommends 1 counselor for every 250 students. In the United States, the average is 375 students to every counselor, so we're behind already 125. And 17% of American high schools don't have any counselors at all. And in rural schools, that gap is often worse. So what AI-powered mental health therapy apps can do is they can allow a single therapist to manage multiple conversations simultaneously. And it uses AI to triage needs and draft responses that the human therapist then reviews and sends. So what we're looking at is a platform, your phone, your device, your laptop, with which students are familiar, and they can initiate and then continue a dialogue through their device with a real human therapist. What the AI tool does in the middle is it fields the inquiries and it prioritizes patients and students for response. The AI bot can identify signals, it can draft responses that are all reviewed by the human therapist before they're sent. But the human therapist ultimately can manage more cases than ever before. It's not replacing therapists, it's simply multiplying their reach. And we see the same sort of applications in general healthcare as well. Rural healthcare faces similar structural challenges as education. Too few providers, too widely spread. 15% of the US population lives in rural spaces. So it's 15%. But rural counties in the United States are home to 66% of primary healthcare provider shortage areas. So we see the mismatch there. What AI can do is it can bring the specialists closer into rural areas. AI-assisted image analysis can allow radiologists to triage X-rays, MRIs, CT scans, can catch what otherwise might be missed, particularly in settings that don't have specialists available. Deep learning tools can also support the formulation of individualized patient care plans that can be matched to a patient's particular medical history, genetic makeup, age, demographic information, including sex or race. And for a rural physician without quick access to a specialist, this is a game changer. It's a force multiplier. If anyone here reads the Wall Street Journal regularly, you're familiar with Joanna Stern, who's their tech writer, and she wrote an absolutely incredible article this week that's excerpted from her book that includes a physician's acknowledgement that AI can notice subtle changes in body scans that simply escape human attention and are indiscernible to the human eye. And it's not just physical health, it's mental health as well. We've talked about primary healthcare provider shortage areas. 65% of non-metro US counties, so 65% of rural counties, do not have a psychiatrist. And more than 60% of rural residents live in those provider shortage areas. Now, the needs are about the same in rural and urban spaces. So there's really no difference in terms of what the population needs in terms of the incidences of mental health conditions in rural and urban areas in the United States. But rural residents face higher risks due to stigma, geographic isolation, and a shortage of mental health care providers. So where does AI play a role in this? As just one example, Vanderbilt University conducted a study. They used AI-driven clinical alerts to help doctors identify patients who are at risk for suicide. It was a 6-month study. It tracked more than 7,500 patient interactions. From those, AI was able to send 600 alerts to treating doctors, and 0 suicides were recorded during that period among a group that otherwise was tagged as high risk. And for rural spaces, it digs a little bit deeper. The American Farm Bureau Federation has documented that farming is actually correlated with elevated anxiety, depression, and suicide rates that are above the national average. And these are driven by all the concerns about the things we can't control: weather, markets, financial pressure, isolation. For rural providers, these are our customers and neighbors, and AI-assisted mental health tools represent a genuine leap in intervention. For the rest of the population, AI is compressing research timelines in pharmaceutical research. There's news of a recent project that it used AI to develop a snake venom antidote in months. following a process that would have taken 5 to 10 years in ordinary times for identifying the compound. Now, you still have the trials afterwards that will take a year or two, but what we've done is we've dramatically compressed pharmaceutical R&D for identification, testing, and faster results. When we get down to agriculture, which is the third pillar in the rural community, you have education, healthcare, agriculture. Agriculture at its heart is a business of logistics. It's planting at the right time, it's feeding at the right time, it's harvesting at the right time, it is getting product to market at the right time, everything at the right time, and AI was built for this. In the field, AI-enabled equipment can photograph crops as a tractor passes through the field. And what happens is, as the front end of that equipment passes over, typically moving at about 12 to 14 miles an hour, it images what it sees growing in front of it. And it can send those images into the cloud, and they can analyze thousands of images and decide in real time whether by the time the back end of that equipment passes over the plant, it is going to apply herbicide or fertilizer. And the studies show that this is reducing chemical input by up to 60%. And if it's not doing chemical herbicide application, they can burn it off with a laser with tolerances measured in centimeters. The systems can identify disease and infestation. On the flip side, at harvest time, AI-powered robots can harvest fruit at peak ripeness because the robots can image the fruit and determine sugar content and ripeness just based on the color and the texture of the fruit. You have soil and air sensors that feed into yield prediction models that can advise planting and irrigation strategies, again, analyzing data and planning for the season ahead. And these sensors can be used to monitor animal health and detect early signs of disease. They can optimize feed management, track breeding cycles, leading to less loss and more precision. Again, all of this depends on the connectivity that you provide. Without reliable broadband, none of these tools function in the field. So the ISPs are not passive observers of this transformation. We are really the infrastructure that makes it possible. But the elephant in the room that a lot of people come in with is, what does AI mean for jobs? And there's some honest answers that might be difficult to take, and there are some honest answers that should really give us a ton of hope and inject us with a ton of excitement. AI will displace some jobs. It's already beginning in certain sectors. There was a report a year ago that found that IT unemployment increased from 3.7 to 5.9% in January 2025. That's above the national average. It's real. And it was attributed to AI tools being used for basic coding. But at the same time, we see positive disruption. The US Bureau of Labor Statistics has taken a few deep dives, and they've got some optimistic data. BLS project AI-related job growth in numerous industries, including software development, database architecture, aerospace, civil, electrical, and hardware engineering, and even personal finance and investment analysts. Wharton, which is the business school at the University of Pennsylvania, surveyed executives in finance, tech, retail, manufacturing, and other industries, and found that half of them expect to hire more interns because of AI. And 40% of those companies also plan to hire more entry-level workers. And here's the surprising thing. BLS reports that even lawyers and paralegals are expected to see AI-related job growth. Now, AI might be used for preliminary document collection and review, but human judgment and interactions will still be key components of the profession. So what are companies doing with this? There is a software developer firm in Austin, Texas. It requires employees to spend 20% of their work week exploring AI company is called Ignite Tech. There is another firm, Accenture, which is a global consulting firm with nearly 800,000 employees, views AI training as reskilling, and it factors AI engagement into performance evaluations and counts employees' abilities to use generative AI as one of the skills, no different than their ability to use a computer, no different than their ability to write well, no different than their abilities to conduct mathematical analytics. And PricewaterhouseCoopers, now known as PwC, one of the big four accounting firms, requires AI training for new hires. So it seems to be a little bit counterintuitive, but this deliberate focus on AI can be used to spotlight naturally high achievers. So this gets back into that construct that we talked about before of AI being a general input technology to make things run better and more efficiently. And history is a bit instructive here. The economist John Maynard Keynes coined the term technological unemployment in the early 20th century. And he said that this describes circumstances in which efficiency in labor outpace the creation of new labor opportunities. But he also said the phases are transitory. The example I always go back to is the invention of the steam engine and the Industrial Revolution. Automation and mechanization didn't result in mass unemployment. And if it did, then all the automation that we see today, the most rudimentary things that make our lives easier, dishwashers and washing machines, robotics in automotive construction and development, would have meant thousands, hundreds of thousands of us on the bread lines, but it didn't. It just simply created new labor demands. And Russian economist Rostilov Kapelyushnikov shrugs off these warnings of the robocapocalypse. In an article titled The Myth of Technological Unemployment, Kapelyushnikov asserts that in the long run, the reduction in labor demand under the impact of new technologies is merely a theoretical probability that has never been realized in practice. And I don't think that any of us were around at the time of the invention of the steam engine, but I suspect that many of us have watched the dominance of Microsoft Excel. And when Excel was introduced, people thought it was going to eliminate accountants. That was the fear. It didn't. It made accountants' jobs easier. I'm sure that all of us are using Excel in our daily jobs for non-mathematical functions as well. We're using it to sort data, to analyze data, to tell us a story, to create graphs. It's made our work faster, more accurate, and more valuable, and AI is following the same arc. The expected net impact is not fewer jobs, it's different jobs. Higher skilled, more analytical, better compensated. Now, what this means for the rural workforce development team is that we've got to be ready. So we have to understand how to deploy and manage AI, not just use the tools. We have to build expertise in the scientific and mathematical foundations of predictive analytics and how to code with AI, and also develop the capacity, whether it's utilities, bandwidth, computational, around AI security, and the legal landscape that's emerging around it. So as we do that, we also have to be aware of the risks. AI has nearly unlimited capacity to collect, identify, and analyze data from diverse online sources. That's what we talked about before, scraping the internet. That is the power of AI. It's also the risk of AI. AI will gather data indiscriminately. It will gather data without owner consent. So if you have data that is proprietary, lock it up, whether it's personal or enterprise, because the gathering of data without owner consent is a real and growing threat. And it is particularly acute in healthcare and finance. Now, there are practical defenses. You can use cloud platforms that consolidate your data in secure environments. You can use AI tools where you bring the AI model to your data as opposed to bringing your data to the model. And that distinction matters. You can also rely on third-party certifications to identify vetted vendors who keep that data secure. Another hazard of AI are hallucinations we talked about before. AI can and will generate responses based on fictitious data. In a customer service setting, it's embarrassing. In healthcare or legal, it's devastating. It is a liability. Human oversight is not optional, it is essential. AI is designed to please the user. So when you prompt AI and it delivers a conclusion, push back. Ask the AI model, are you sure? If you have a question, ask that question. Challenge it with another data point. I've done this a number of times, whether it's been for survey results, whether it has been for site checking or gathering literary or legal sources. There are numerous instances of lawyers who have gotten tripped up and they've gotten caught populating written filings in court arguments with fictitious cases. And a favorite story of mine involves a lawyer who, in a disciplinary action for this type of malfeasance, so he was caught submitting a brief in court with made-up cases, and he was subject to a disciplinary action in court. In the disciplinary proceeding, he then filed a defense of his behavior, and his defensive filing included additional fictitious cases. And it's not just when you ask AI an open-ended question, hey, give me some cases that address this issue. I've had instances I've uploaded a dozen documents into AI and I've said, please summarize these and give me citations to the pages in which this information is pulled in a summary memo. And AI has hallucinated. It's made stuff up that didn't exist in any of the documents that I gave it. It's a tremendous tool, but we can trust it, but we've got to verify it. And that feeds into customer perceptions of AI. Customers might be wary of interacting with AI agents or having their data used in ways they don't understand. So I think transparency is important. When AI is supporting a human outcome, whether it's faster response times, better recommendations, stronger security, say so. Let the customer see the benefit. And that gets into AI policies as well. Any company that's using AI, any organization that's using AI or is planning to, really needs a written policy. And I would suggest that you formulate this policy and then pass it by your lawyer. What we should be thinking of are the approved use cases for when AI can be used in your organization, what the process is for approving new use cases, your data security guidelines, and these should include data retention standards, governance policies for use and disposal of confidential information, the boundaries, guardrails, the degrees to which AI can operate without human supervision, restricted uses where you don't want to use AI. HR is a minefield because of algorithmic bias, which has been documented. Data belonging to minors, how can you identify it? And if you do identify it, how do you protect it? And disclosure requirements when you are using AI-generated content. And this is going to be multi-department across the organization. It's cross-departmental. It's going to have to include human resources, legal, IT, and senior leadership. And if you're in any type of regulated sector, whether it's telecom, healthcare, finance, the policies have to address those issues in those sectors specifically. I know that I've thrown a lot at you, but I want to start breaking it down a little bit and sharing some real world examples. AI, we talked general input technology, we've talked about the LLMs. I would say think of it as a graduate student intern, someone who can assist you mightily but still requires supervision. And I think you're already using AI without knowing it. Uh, every time you open up Amazon Prime, every time you hop onto Netflix and they say, hey, we saw you watched Rocky, we think you'd like to watch Creed. Um, anytime products are suggested, chatbots, it's here to stay. It's rewarding those who engage with it thoughtfully. And I think demand is just going to grow. What we did at NTCA was we hosted a 30-day AI challenge. And the goal here was to create a pressure-free, safe space for our member companies and their staff to dip their foot in the AI pool. And we gamified it. We gave out these great trophies. We told their stories at our conference. And we told them it's not going to be politically correct youth soccer where everyone gets a trophy, but even if you test it for 30 days and you didn't get the results you wanted, tell us your story anyway, because even the stories of what you might think are failure can still win the contest, because what worked and what didn't work is instructive for people as well. So we broke it up into 4 categories: marketing and content creation, network management, administration, and customer service and engagement. And then for each of those categories, we had 2 divisions, experienced and novice. So I just want to share a few examples of what our companies did. We had a provider in Kansas that used Microsoft Copilot to simplify award applications and presentations, including their application for this 30-day AI challenge that put them onto stage with the trophy. And what they called it was a dictated data dump. They used Microsoft Copilot. They spoke naturally into the tool. They told their story, just this one lovely woman in her office by herself. And then she let Copilot sort the story, edit it, format it, check for grammar, and Copilot organized it into an application. And she said that the task felt more like a conversation than a chore. They produced a polished application with comparatively little effort. And what they did is they copied the questions, directions, and word limits directly into Copilot, and then they clicked the microphone and they talked. And Copilot parsed and organized the responses and put everything into the right question category. And then they could go back and they could adjust the tone on the request. Should it be softer? Should it be more aggressive? Is it within the word limit? And it's not just an award application, but it can be a grant application as well. The key insight, though, is you need to know what you're talking about. The tools amplify your knowledge, they don't replace it. And the example I always get back to is there was a writing competition in the United States that ran from the mid-'80s to the early 2000s called the Bulwer-Lytton Writing Contest. And the winner was the person who could write the worst opening sentence to a fake novel. And the theory was that in order to write badly enough to win the competition, you had to be a really good writer, because then you had understood how the English language misfires and how you're going to mess it up. So that's one. Customer service and engagement. We have a lot of fragmented systems in our organizations that can make it hard for customers to get answers or for staff to provide that sort of anticipatory care that we talked about earlier at the top of the hour. So this is a company that used an LLM to provide conversational support, and then they combined it with predictive analytics to study churn. Where are we losing customers? Where are customers signing up? How does that connect to network performance? How do we study or correlate delinquency risk to our customer? They used OpenAI, they used Google Cloud, they used Vertex AI. The customer doesn't need to know that all these systems are operating in the background, but we can put them to work to provide faster and more accurate service. And what the customer was able to find, they found improved self-service. And we talked about that before, helping people troubleshoot on their own. They found better predictive care. They found better personalized service. And they measured them in NPS, Net Promoter Score, and FCR, first call resolution, and found improvement in all of them. There was another company that used AI for performance reviews, which nobody likes doing. Managers don't like them, employees don't like them. So they built a performance review coaching GPT to address this. And the goal was balance empathy with results. And it was a fairly modest product. It was a 600 to 800 word coaching guide for each employee, and it help managers identify genuine growth areas, but then couch the coaching in language that works. So the way that it works on the ground is the manager uploads a self-review narrative and their own review narrative. So you've got the employee self-review narrative, and then the manager uploads his or her observations. And then the GPT, the generative pre-trained transformer, produces an analysis with coaching directives that are tied to defined goals. Again, not rocket science, but it's a little bit of rocket science in terms of how it makes this process so much easier. Right now, the IT department in the company is running this. They haven't given it over to HR yet. And once it goes over to HR, it's going to have to get into the legal checks. But it's an experiment, and they find that it's working. There was another company that created in Minnesota. They created an AI-powered training academy, and they used a large language model to simulate complex, high-pressure conditions in a safe space before their CSRs face them on a live call. And it created role-specific training. So for the technicians, it helped them explain things like optical light levels and refraction and diagnostics. For their sales team, it helped them build what we call a competitive teardown and a value proposition. For the sales rep, it helped them show what all the different packages were. And the native audio, the AI-powered audio that the system used, mimicked the human voice so well. It was designed to interrupt the CSR. It was designed to pause. It was designed to stutter or stammer. So simulating the real rhythm of a difficult customer call, and then you get that training of how to deal with the cranky customer out of your system when you're working with a bot. There are some, again, I call it the 3 C's as we're thinking about bringing AI into our organizations, and it's confidentiality, copyrights, and confirmation. So you have to protect your data and your customers' data. You have to know what goes into the model. Might not stay private. So again, that's bringing the model to your data instead of the data to the model. So know the platform, know the exposure. Copyrights, if you're using this for AI generated content, you have to make sure you're not violating anyone's copyrights or protected material. And then confirmation is verifying the outputs before you act on them. Hallucinations are real, and human review is not optional. You really need that as a total input into the system. So we are broadband providers. I think that we are at an unusual intersection. We're not just users of the AI, but we really are the infrastructure that makes AI tools possible for the communities and the different industries we serve. So whether it's a soil sensor network for agriculture, whether it is supporting a school using adaptive educational programming, whether it is helping doctors in your community connect with specialists beyond and using these tools for diagnostics or patient treatment, everything depends on our network. And I think that presents us with a real opportunity to close the gap between rural and urban spaces. And we've talked about telework as being, the work anywhere from anywhere. And I think what AI does is it really, again, it doesn't replace, but it really enhances the opportunity to do anything from anywhere, better, stronger, faster, and to really create very future forward promise for all of us. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions that anyone has.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joshua. I wanted to give a quick plug to your white paper on AI applications for rural broadband providers. I've posted that in the chat. We've got the link up here. We just have a few minutes, and so I really wanted to ask you, thank you for sharing some stories from your membership. I think those are really invaluable to hear how people are innovating in that space. And I think the primary question I want to ask here is, given that a competitive advantage for rural providers is very often these personalized local service, what's the risk that you see or that your members see that AI-powered customer service can begin to erode that differentiation between, say, more larger providers, less rural and regional providers? If we're all using the same tools, how do we differentiate, Joshua?
So I think the easiest way to do it, not that there's anything easy about this, but one way to do it is if you ever hop onto an AI chatbot with certain companies, you can type in, "Hey, I'd like to speak with a live agent, please," and it just keeps kicking you back into the bot. No, let me help you. Let me help you. If I were looking at this from the customer service standpoint, I think what I would do is I would front and center on the bot say, "Hey, I'm an AI-powered bot. The minute you want to talk to a live customer service representative, let me know and I'll connect you. But I'm here to see if we can resolve your problem faster and more efficiently." So at the outset, say, "Hey, this is AI, and we're going to try to do this faster than we could do it with human intervention."
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Another question I wanted to ask about was, the the types of problems that AI can solve versus do you see it more as a differentiation in that it's new types of problems or that problems that we already know about but just previously wouldn't have attempted? Like you talked a lot about things that remove friction, for
Right.
example, in writing, for example, that's reorganizing information. But do you see specifically for ISPs like novel sets of problems that ISPs can tackle?
So I think it's both. We see you see the possibility of a trouble ticket coming because there's a fiber cut or there's a micro bend. These are issues we know about. We experience them today, but we don't always notice them until it's too late. This can notice that sort of anomaly, that sort of blip in the RX before we would have noticed it or acted on it. That's the stuff we know about and deal with today. What's coming forward, I think, we'll be able to use AI to address those as well. And I think the analogy that I can think of, I hope it's an apt one. And again, I don't know how old our audience is. But think about
yesterday, a lot of us had over 25 years of experience for sure.
Okay,
But it ranges.
so
Absolutely, there's a range.
okay, so if there's anyone out here, again, this is a technical crowd. So if there's anyone out here who's ever worked on a carbureted engine, if you've ever had to prop open a carbureted engine with a ballpoint pen, you understand you understand auto mechanics. But we also understand that we are well beyond the stage of carbureted engines and electronic fuel injection, and now with the EVs coming out. So I don't know that 20 years ago any of us would have envisioned what auto mechanics on EV looks like. And I think that's where we are as well, but we understand that the technology is changing, that we're always going to have to keep up with it. The question is, do we have platform tools that enable us conquer those challenges more quickly and more efficiently, with greater understanding than we did before.
And we run the risk of getting more and more complicated, but it's a risk I'm willing to take, for sure.
Listen, everything is more complicated, but we're living longer than we did a century ago, so that's the trade-off. You want to get from point A to point B, and by flying instead of driving. All right, so suddenly birds lose a little bit of their magic.
Joshua, I want to thank you. This is our time, and we're gonna start a new session very shortly. I really appreciate you sharing your insights with us. I encourage folks again to check out that white paper, and really appreciate the time you spent with us today, Joshua.
All right, thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. So we're going to take about a minute here, and we will be back very shortly. Good morning. Welcome back. I'm sorry I'm having camera issues. Welcome to Claude and Nathan. I'm going to throw them up here. And actually, you know what? Given that my camera isn't working, I think I don't want to read your bios. I'd just love to have you gentlemen introduce yourself. You're familiar faces to me, and I'm really looking forward to this session. So I'm going to go away and see if I can fix my camera for the Q&A. So take it away, gents.
All right, very good. Claude, why don't you introduce yourself first? Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Nathan. Thanks, Jeremy. And thanks to the Preseem team for having us here to talk about a really incredibly timely topic. So Claude Aiken, Chief Strategy and Legal Officer at NextLink Internet. My portfolio across the company is pretty broad, and definitely have been a very heavy user of AI in the last year. So happy to chat about it for sure.
Very good. And I'm Nathan Stuke. I'm the founder and CEO of Whisper. Started it 23 years ago. I saw people in the chat saying how many years they were in the industry, and it's definitely been a long time. Can't even say out of my garage is at my '86 Honda Accord with a fold-up ladder. But oh boy, we have come a long way. It's been great to see how our industry has grown and what we've done. And I'd like to point out that Claude is the original Claude. Please do not get him confused with Claude AI. That's got to be horrible for you, Claude. If you ever go search your name on the internet, you never come up in any searches now because
I know
it's Claude
it's
AI.
sad. It's sad. Actually, Bloomberg wrote an article about that just this past week about how hard it is to be a person named Claude, and they went out and interviewed a bunch of people named Claude about how Claude AI is impacting them in their personal lives, which was kind of funny.
Right. I think that we call those unintended consequences. Right?
Exactly. It's exactly how all of the women named Alexa felt before
Right.
Amazon decided to name their home smart services Alexa. So
yes, I did have a friend in high school. Her name was Tina Turner. And for the
Oh,
longest
gosh.
time, I thought she was like her name. She was given that name before Tina Turner became big. And then as I got older, I realized, oh no, she got the name 10 years after Tina Turner. So she was named after her.
That's interesting.
Definitely excited to share with everybody kind of how we're looking at AI and how it kind of helps the rural and regional ISP. Listening to the whole session yesterday and today, there's a lot of really good nuggets in there, and hopefully you'll get some nuggets out of our conversation here.
For sure. Yeah, so I think we just kind of came up with a framework. We're just going to sort of ask each other some questions and chat back and forth about how our organizations are using AI and how smaller rural and regional ISPs can get significant benefits out of adopting AI in a variety of different fashions. So I guess I'll just kind of kick off to you, Nathan. I mean, how are you viewing implementing AI at Whisper?
Yeah, I think it's a really good foundational question because I see AI in two different forms. I see it how my individual employees use it. So Claude for my programmers, Copilot, ChatGPT, those things. How do our individual contributors use AI? And then I see it as systems AIs. How do our systems use it? Like right now, I don't have an active way for my field installers to use AI. However, we're using it for how we dispatch and how we schedule and how we do some of our training. And I think when people conflate that and they think AI is just, oh, how do I use AI? They run into problems when they're trying to set up policies for both. And once we split that apart and said, no, how do our individuals use it? You're not allowed to load personal data into systems. You're not allowed to use free versions because if it's free, you are the product, right? We have all of these policies and procedures which are different than when my IT staff says, I'm going to implement a call review system that then checks to make sure we were friendly to the customer and those things. So once we started kind of breaking that down, and both of them are very important, but you have different criteria and a different way of looking at it when you think of it in those two veins. And that really helped us catapult our adoption of it, right? And how we're using it. And it's funny, not a lot, I would say some of our employees are kind of like, well, I don't want to use AI and I'm not going to do it. And it's like, well, I hate to break it to you, you're already using a lot of it. You've already actually every day
exactly.
interacting with it and you don't even realize it, but we're trying to put integrated those into our systems and everything. So yeah, how are you guys implementing it at your company, and what do you?
Yeah, it's I think that's a helpful framework to use to break it down, right? Because I think for us, we're encouraging pretty much all of our employees whose function could benefit from the use of the individual AI to adopt it in some form or fashion. And I think we can talk a little bit more about how that works out a little bit later. But then it's the same sort of thing. We're implementing system AI, everything from a tool that will allow us to evaluate the likelihood of a particular customer churning, right? For a ISP in rural, the threat of competition and the threat of Starlink is a lot more real now than it was a few years ago. So trying to figure out which of your customers are more likely to churn based on 50, 60 different pieces of data can be a valuable tool. We're also using it to increase the intelligence around our infrastructure response times, right? So you've got alarms that are going off on a variety of different pieces of equipment in a variety of different places for a variety of different reasons. It can take a human a little while to sort through all of that. AI can do that a lot more quickly. You still have to have a human in the loop to, at this point at least, to be able to sort of fully sign off on the issue and implement a fix. But I think we're getting pretty close to the point where AI could maybe even do the fixes itself. Having rogue intelligence touching your network may be a little bit scary to some folks, but it's definitely a tool like that has allowed us to cut down our response time to alarms by orders of magnitude significantly. And then, we've also been adopting an AI chatbot for customer service, and it's interesting because when we turned it on, a big core value of ours is making sure that we have good customer service, and we that impacted the choice to say, hey, okay, we're going to make this available. We're not going to force people to choose it. They can still talk to a human if they want. And when we first turned it on, it was interesting because the data showed that the majority of people actually chose to talk to the AI bot rather than a human customer service agent. So when you adopt AI, you get some sort of interesting results that you didn't really think about. And so it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. When I was talking to Cam months ago when you guys first turned that on, it blew my mind that it was over 70% of people chose like, well, instead of just waiting on hold, let me try. And I know since then I've talked to multiple companies through their AI agent. Some are not so good.
Some are good, some are not so good.
No, it is painful. Like I'm stuck in this loop and I can't get out. Whereas I know you guys have like a ripcord, right? At any time you can be like, oh,
at any time.
I don't want to talk to this machine. So I think that's fascinating how you guys have done that. How has implementing AI helped your ability to hire? Like, what are you seeing the differences between rural and urban hiring marketplaces with the lens of AI on?
Sure. It's interesting. One of the things that we have seen for heavy AI adopters, right? AI enables, and again, we're kind of talking about the individual AI use case here, but if you hire somebody who is proficient with using AI, even if they otherwise may not be the most experienced, the most knowledgeable, have the best resume, be the best at their job. If they're willing to learn, and if they are taking full advantage of kind of this co-intelligence that exists alongside you in an individual capacity, their performance really jumps, and it's sort of leveled the playing field between the higher performers internally and the lower performers. So what that means is that we're probably more comfortable going out and hiring a teachable, tech savvy person than necessarily trying to find somebody in an urban area who has 50 years of experience. Don't get me wrong, the experience is absolutely critical to have in some places and at some stages. But it's enabled us to look a little bit more broadly at the potential talent base that's out there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I love that. It kind of remember when Google was coming out, and like if you were the one that knew how to use Google, you had all the knowledge,
Oh,
right?
for sure.
And it's the same way with AI now. That I love the way you frame that you can take a medium performer and really scale them up in a very quick way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know what it says about me that we looked at some of our internal data the other day after that discussion, and I'm kind of the number 2 in the company in terms of tokens used. So I don't know what that says about my overall performance, but it does mean that I'm a pretty heavy AI adopter just on an individual basis. So yeah, I guess I'll kind of turn that around to you, Nathan. Like, how do you see your employees using AI? And what are some of the interesting things you see them do?
Yeah, so I was pushing my employees, or I do push my employees to use AI. I want them to use it. I want them to be involved in it. And I wasn't getting pushback, but I wasn't getting a lot of people interested in it, right? They were like, oh, okay. And this is back at the beginning of the whole BEAD application. And, you had 150 different questions. We were bidding in 10 or 15 states, and I was like, all right, let's break this up. Let's have you answer these and you answer those. And I finally said, you know what, guys, I want it to be a common theme across all of our answers. I don't want them to be able to tell that 2 different people, in our case, 5 different people wrote something. So let me take a stab at it tonight. I'm going to answer these questions with AI. It's a new tool I just downloaded, just become a customer. And I put it in, and in 3 hours, I produced almost 300 pages worth of documentation. And at first, I would lead it. I would answer the question, right? I would cut and paste the question in, and then I would lead what I wanted it to say. Well, answer it this way, answer it that way, answer it this way. And then, as those of us who did BEAD, we realized it was asking the same question 5 different ways, slightly different. And then, I don't know, on question 20, I'm like, I'm not going to lead this. I'm just going to ask it. And now it hallucinated and it made up stuff, and we had to delete things and we couldn't say all those things. But it was an eye opener for the rest of the team. And they're like, I'm sorry, you did this in 3 hours? I'm like, yeah, 3 hours last night. Like, we're done. We thought this was going to be a month-long process for us. And then all they had to do was read it over. So that was when I really started to see other people, of my individual contributors, if you will, not the systems, start to really say, wow, I want to learn more. How do I do this? And so it was really good. Now, the flip side of that is I've had some other employees who you can tell they use AI, which I'm totally fine with. I want them to use AI. But then they, like, when they cut and paste it, they miss, and they cut and paste in the next step, I could turn this into a 1-page executive summary, or if you want, I could expand more in more detail. And I'm like, whoa, okay. And that's fine. You missed it. But then what I would do is I would ask them questions about what they posted, right? What they came up with. And I noticed that some of them had no idea what was in there. And it's like, whoa, hold on. Like, yes, I'm glad you used AI because it helped you frame your information. It helped you do all these things. However, you still have accountability. You are still ultimately responsible.
Absolutely.
For the good stuff that it puts out and the junk that it puts out. And that was some teachable moments that we had to have, because if we didn't do that, then we would be just as smart or just as dumb as AI. And as we all know, AI can't make any mistakes. It always says, oh, well, that's a good catch, and it's like, oh my goodness. But we have to have the human side of things. I do not want to give them a free pass. And I'm actually much, much harder on them for not paying attention to what they cut and paste in than I am for them either not using AI or using AI. Because I want them to use it, but we have to be responsible with it. Yeah. So on, we're talking about AI and using it, and, I was doing up the numbers. Copilot, I think it's $30 per person and everything. And we're like, oh, can we afford it for everybody in the company? Do they all need it? And then you start to look at it and say, well, wait a minute. My bill rate's $300 an hour. If I save 1 hour I mean, that covers 10 months. Like, yes, all executive level people, all office people should have this because you can really, really harness it. But how are you guys looking at it? I know you guys have done a lot of in-house, right? Where I've seen your data center and the amount of power you have coming in. I mean, yes, you're able to heat your building.
And we need more.
Heat your building in Texas, right? But how are you guys looking at that? What are you guys looking on making these decisions, whether you use a service or you bring it in-house? What are you guys doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no real secret sauce around it. I mean, I think a lot of it is justified in terms of time and costs saved, right? So if we think that we can do, either turn up a better service for the customer, save some money, save some time, ultimately that makes us a better company. I'll give you just sort of one quick example in the legal function, which I oversee. Sometimes we'll have a huge influx of contracts that need to be reviewed, and so sometimes we've sent them out to outside counsel for review, and that'll be a few $100 for them to go through every single contract. At this point, I've built up a specialized contract review playbook that AI can run review off of. And I've actually found that the outputs are better than some of our lower costs outside counsel. And I'm spending a couple bucks in tokens on each contract review as opposed to a few $100s in outside counsel review. So that's just one area. Some of the other things that I've talked about, the system-based AI, we've liked it so much that we've kind of spun it off and are looking to sell that to other ISPs at this point. That's something that we have to invest in, on-prem clusters and local models and things like that. But things that are going to be sort of system-wide giant cost savings rather than a few $100 here or there. That's something where we're more likely to invest in the infrastructure necessary to run our own LLMs and data on-prem. But overall, it's just can we save time? Can we save money? Can we serve the customer better? And if the answer to any one of those is yes, it justifies the investment in it.
Yeah, I love how you guys frame it up in man hours saved. Right? How many man hours? You talked early on about how you're trying to get your response time down. And you're right. You have a huge network. 95% of all the warnings you don't even have to look at.
Exactly.
You have to get through them. And when you guys say, hey, I want to save 200 man hours a week, what do you do? How do you do that? And at least in Whisper, there's never a shortage of work. It isn't like I'm looking at reducing my workforce. I'm looking at doing all of that boring stuff and then coming back and saying, hey, how do I then get them to do all the other more important things I need them to do? So I think that's really good.
Nathan, I want to ask a follow-up question on that because
Yeah,
we've got a little bit more time left, and selfishly, I want to get a question in. The conversation's been really lively and fantastic, guys, but this is something that both of you touched on, but I'd love to hear from you both on. We hear a lot of kind of fear, uncertainty, and doubt about the costs of AI. Like it's going to result in a 10x workforce reduction. And of course, you're thinking about it more from the perspective is how can I make the people that I have today more productive so I can grow my business. I'm not trying to shrink my business. And both of you touched a little bit on the kind of skills that a human needs now in order to be this human in the loop, which we could foresee at least for some time before we, are fully agentic. And you talked a little bit about teachability being a key attribute. What are some other human attributes that you're finding really produce standout high performers that previously are those soft skills? Are those a combination of soft and hard skills? Like, I don't want to prime it, but maybe you first, Nathan.
Good question.
One that doesn't have anything to do with AI necessarily. We have a high school group they call the CEO, and they come in every day. They get up early, 6 o'clock in the morning, or 7 o'clock in the morning. They're here, and when you first get introduced to them, they can't look you in the face, and they barely shake your hand, and they're just very timid. And then by the end of the semester, actually even partway through the semester, oh, Mr. Stuk, so nice to meet you. Thank you so much. And like, it's like a night and day difference. So I think the biggest skill that is hard to learn out there is actually communicating with people, right? Not your face in your phone, not your whatever. And that's something that AI can't replace. It can help you communicate better, but you still physically have to do it. I think that's a really big one. The other one for me, teachability is great. I think to add and onto that, I would say curiosity. The one thing I really like about AI is that I will put into it 4 or 5 ideas I have. It will spit back 5 or 6 that I had already thought about, I didn't think were good or whatever. 2 that are horrible, like, no, I'm not doing that. And then 2 I never thought of. And it's like, oh, that's what I need. So being curious, being able to work with things and really take it one step further, and not being so much like it has to be perfect before I do anything with it. I can be curious and ask questions.
Fantastic answer, Nathan. I love that. That lifelong curiosity. That's what makes learners, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lifelong learners. How about you, Claude?
Yeah, I think Nathan just kind of stole my answer, so
Sorry,
I'll echo it. Yeah, I mean, I think curiosity is absolutely key. I mean, we are at the sort of the bottom of the S curve in terms of AI adoption and the life cycle, and so there's a lot of first adopter scenarios going on right now. And first adopter doesn't necessarily mean leader, but it does mean sort of leg up on the next guy, at least for the near future. And then I'd also echo the soft skills piece, right? So AI has gotten great at ideating and sort of coming alongside you as a co-intelligence. Some of the emails that it writes, things could be communicated a little bit better. And there are ways that you can train that, but knowing, understanding people, having good communication, having those good sort of soft people skills are things that it's going to, I'm not going to say AI is never going to get there, but it's going to take a lot longer for it to be able to replace those kind of skills.
I think it's a real opportunity for us to lean back into being human again, right? Let's offload some of the stuff maybe we weren't that great at in the first place. So not to inject my own opinions there, but I really appreciate both of you taking the time to have this conversation in front of us. We got to listen in on it, and thank you for answering the questions. We're going to move on to our next session. I hope you stick around for that, and please continue to use the chat here, folks. Really thank you, Claude. Thank you, Nathan, and I look forward to seeing you at a show soon.
Good. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to get right into our intros here for Drew and Jeff. So let me get Drew going here, and Jeff. I don't see Jeff's camera yet, but I do. I think your mic's on, Jeff.
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'll start with you, Jeff. Jeff Little, CEO of Above Wireless LLC, expert in using AI for work construction business operations, bringing a practical field-driven perspective on how AI can improve efficiency, decision-making, and execution in telecom and infrastructure environments. That sounds amazing. Drew Beveridge, Chief Operating Officer at 360 Broadband, a regional ISP that delivers fast and dependable internet to more than 16,000 subscribers across 30 counties in rural and small town Oklahoma and Texas. Not just a pretty face. An experienced broadband executive, Drew has been helping to bring high-speed internet to unserved and underserved homes and businesses since 1996. All right, guys, I'm going to get out.
I was trying to Google, how to get the beard on AI, and it's not giving me any help at all of how to get the beads. So,
yeah. It's
sorry, Jeremy, go ahead.
No worries. I'm going to actually get out of the way. Welcome, guys. Nice to see you again, and I'll be back in about 15 minutes for the Q&A.
Perfect. Jeff, it's good to see you again, buddy. I'll let you jump off. You have some beautiful slides in place.
Nice. All right, guys. Welcome. would like to touch base on obviously how I use AI and kind of our construction processes and help a lot of our managers and field crew work way more efficient than they ever have. Um, the construction and field operations lens for ISPs is pretty much similar. You are doing a lot of good construction and everything. And this AI kind of helps keeps everything together, and everyone doesn't have to have that notepad and pen and keep notes and everything. So this is kind of how our process and our determination on how we use AI in our construction processes. So two lanes. Lanes is kind of how we break it up, is like an office intelligence and field execution. You know, where AI is kind of what you put into it. So if you track a lot of data in your construction processes and how you're building things, it's going to pay dividends when you're trying to improve your AI and give it the data to kind of use as a reference. We get the work plan documented and closed out using AI intelligence. So it lets us know what permits at what point of the construction phase, what statuses and stuff like that. It really helps us move and build these dashboards for our managers to view on what is actively happening in the field. We deal with a lot of big projects with multiple phases, and you forget things, and AI kind of really helps drive that process without having to remember that or revise a lot of stuff. Every construction job has two builds, the physical build and the information build. So obviously AI is not going to help build the site better. It's going to help organize the information and what you need to do, especially in document heavy permit and CDs, environmental. A lot of areas have a lot of documentation that needs to happen, especially like JHAs, things of that nature. What's great about that is the scope, permits, photos, reports, and closeouts. AI can help improve that. So your team still needs to do the process efficiently and good and document it well, but AI can help organize all that information, where one manager would have to review a site for, let's say, half an hour to get the latest scoop on what's happening on progress and this and that. AI can really sum that up, where he can turn that into a 5-minute read and be as knowledgeable, if not better, than if he had to just kind of hunt for that information and sift through all the data himself. Where construction time that's where a lot of construction time gets lost, is chasing stuff. So where a manager would need to answer a question or chasing information, let's say a crew lead needs to know where his next destination would be going, the AI bot would know kind of where it's next in the process, because the manager is using that as well. So a lot of wasted time chasing statuses, approvals, access. How do we get in here? Who's the right person to call? Gate code combos, missing answers, reconstructing what happened, who, what, and who proved what. AI really is helping us track that, where we don't have to worry about which manager talked to that inspection guy, who scheduled that, who's the guy that's the point of contact for this site for this inspection. Really cuts a lost time on that. Obviously, like retyping reports. My field guys, they're great at construction, but spelling is probably a good C- for some of them. So it helps rewrite a lot of that stuff and probably gives the better language for the managers to know, because a lot of our construction guys use terms that our managers don't for things. So it helps rewrite it for the manager to kind of understand what the construction guys are talking about. And also a lot of unclear things like incomplete closeout. It could be some of our closeouts for some of the work we do could be 300 something photos. Well, a person going through the checklist, that would take forever. Well, now with AI, we're pinpointing those areas where we're losing that time. AI, obviously, again, drafting reports, summarizing our notes, formatting updates, flagging missing stuff. Humans still have to decide the safety. That's the human aspect. What's nice about that is our managers can focus on what's important: safety, getting the approvals, the inspections, everything scheduled when it's actually ready. stuff like that. This is where we're kind of using AI to hone our managers to be better at other things. So it's not necessarily replacing them totally. I don't see anything that I'm doing as far as manager wise. I still need that human element for one, for safety. That'll never be removed. And then, a lot of the coordination, and, you can't have an AI bot call the inspector and schedule an inspection, so it allows them to be able to do those things better. Pre-construction brief, especially with our field crew, it helps out a lot. So the manager doesn't need to talk to 7 different crew leads. He can give them their own unique style. This is what you need to do for today. This is your route. Do this. These are the tools needed. Make sure you have this access code for this site. And, manager doesn't have to have 7 different meetings or one big meeting. Saves a lot of time, with the raw input stuff, it gets a lot of this stuff where our crew leads can just put simple notes. They don't have to be too descriptive, and it will get this information and give us our good report. We can update our clients. We can update our management team with just simple notes like this and get very organized site production, projects, goals hit, stuff like that. So the supervisor still decides what gets submitted, but he gets to review that and make sure that it makes sense for what's getting submitted to clients and permit offices and all that. How we use it in the coordination queue is, permit comments like city asks and stuff like that. Different cities have different ways they want permits done and how you submit it, how you have what's inspected, what's not in person through photos. So that really kind of helps us get the right things filled out for so many areas that at least we would work with. A lot of ISPs are going to deal with different counties, different rules. Locate conflicts, ready to make blocker, the next touch points for the next owner. If you have a multi-phase management, it's going to help do that handoff real well on the construction phase. All AI drafts the queue, the PM confirms facts, owners, and comments. So that's where, we save a lot of time with our managers being able to automate a lot of this stuff here. The capture, the daily reports, the photo, foreman note, the timeline, what happened and when, the evidence of it, the email. So it's going to refer to all the emails in a particular mailbox and keeps all of our information tied to it. You don't need it to necessarily keep track of a 300 site project. You just need to be this county or this phase of work. And that kind of really pushes our narrative, the cause, the impact, and verified items. The AI will still draft the report. Our manager just kind of goes in and fixes it. We've noticed that our managers can seek and change things as they need it, but getting that rough draft really helps them push what the information needs to be out to the right person. So closeout gap is for us is what is ready. So when one site can only go so far and another site is final, we kind of helps us know where we need to be at in different phases of the work, different site issues as far as how far the build is. Did we get that 11-mile run of fiber done? No, we had to stop a mile short. This is why the box was actually set here. That helps us kind of plan where and adapt easily with the AI. Lets us know what's missing in the gaps. Open punch items, unsigned forms, unverified quantities. Material is a big thing, especially coming up with a lot of bottlenecks. You're really going to be counting your nails, every pin. You're going to count everything, and because quantities will be hard to get. And it also helps us know what has been sent, clean closeout summary reviewed by human owner before submission. So my managers know to review everything. Don't just say rewrite this and just copy paste send. That's how we're getting our workers to be more accountable for what they're sending out. It is going to be better, but it can't be just pure AI. Workforce message matters. People judge AI now by how leadership introduces it. So if you introduce this, like it makes them feel like they're documenting their job and so that can be taken over by AI, you know, they're probably not going to give good data and kind of feel uncomfortable. So we let them know, like, this is to make you work better, easier, and faster. You know, it's going to remove the drag, you know, not the dignity from the worker. It's not going to be like, well, you used AI to manage the project, so you're not that good of a manager. You know, you just piloted a AI and he did all the work. You know, how I introduced AI to my team was like a 30-day pilot. I challenged them to see, I counted their tokens and I said, who had used the most tokens would win, you know, I gave them a gift card. And I wanted them to see who would try to use AI the most and adapt. And we kind of talked about how their improvements were and how they were using it. And it helped out the team kind of be more approached to using AI. And then, you know, the AI buys back construction time by shortening the information loop. So all in all, the raw data is, I can tell that our managers are working about half as hard and our crew are running. Before, where we would have all kinds of calls and texts and messages and Slack and all that. Now it's, a lot of it is pretty rare that one-on-one answers need to be answered, because we have certain AI bots that can answer pretty much everything for our field crew almost.
That's
And that's
fascinating.
kind of, yeah, and that's kind of how we're optimizing AI to kind of improve our managers, not replace them.
It sounds like you have a workflow set up that you're able to give them the ability to cut out a lot of the minute tasks and be able to actually focus on their job. Just like our last panelists were talking about, being able to buy back your time. That's fascinating. Yep. I'll do a quick, you know, I've talked about this several times. You know, we here at 360, we do very similar on the idea for everything that we accomplish is on that buyback, right? Can we save time? Can we make our employees have less effort? And so we started out, the entire purpose of our thought process on AI was, how do we get to understand where our shortcomings are, and how do we take all of the data that we have using Preseem and QC and Zabbix and PRTG, and then bring all of those together and analyze that so we know where to turn levers and turn knobs to adjust. But what we found over the time is that, you know, it's, you know, not every human interaction is needing to be trained the same. So using AI to analyze every piece of data that comes in, every customer experience, all network data, we can see where our agents need one-on-one training, and we can adjust to that. I think Claude and Nathan said it earlier, you know, using tools like AI, it's taken someone like me, who I'm not the smartest person in the room. And if I am, it's very dangerous for everybody, but it's allowed me to be able to do my job at a higher level and a higher capacity because it gives me every tool and resource I need to at least find the answer or find where to go. And so it's fascinating what we can do with things like this. Some specific use cases for us when we introduced, you know, obviously AI, you had mentioned, you know, trying to, you know, how many people were using tokens. We did, you know, we released our internal AI use and was not getting much buy-in. So we ended up having to do one-on-one trainings and then lunch and learns, and then set up AI policies in place, and then cybersecurity understandings. And then eventually, I think it was about 7 times, as Nathan Stuke and Traction says, it takes 7 times for the human to hear it and see it before they're not scared of it. And now we have that same instance where people are posting things that I have to use my AI to clean up their AI, which is a problem. So we have to go have that conversation. Like, we need to have this into a formatted ability. But the power is amazing on the buyback. If you guys look at what Preseem and QC are doing, we can see network data, and then we can see customer experience data, and it validates themselves using 2 different methodologies to understand, 1, the network says it was bad, but 2, now your customer is saying it's bad. Now we can take that data, and then our Zabbix and all of the information, and we can say, how many warning signs did we have that said this customer was going to leave, and how do we go back and fix our process to solve that before we lost that customer? And so I think, Nathan, you said that we all have too much work to do, right? So how do we buy back that ability to go from there? Jeff, I'm fascinated by that. I know Jeremy's jumping here to ask questions.
I am. It's been great to hear this conversation, and I do have some questions. Any last things, Drew, before I start, though?
No, go for it.
Okay, this one might be for Jeff, but maybe for both of you, kind of depending on where you are in that journey. So you talked a little bit about this, Drew, but I want to hear Jeff's perspective too. Is like if you talked about people who may be fearing AI. How do you handle an employee who's been used to doing a job a certain way and maybe sees AI as a direct threat, despite the fact that you're saying, "Hey, we're going to take the unpleasant parts of your job and make that easier." Do you still have people who have that perception? And if so, how are you handling it?
I did at first, and what really helped out was when you get one person to start bragging like, I the last 2 hours of the day I had nothing to do, and I just sat there. Like, you start to get employees to brag on how their job is so much easier that they have more free time or stuff like that. But where I've had the best use case is, you kind of work with that person, and most of it is, just what drives them. Listen, I'm going to still pay you the 8 hours. Just let's let you work better, more efficient. And so, you just kind of have to challenge that worker to do it. I mean, it all depends on the role. If a payroll manager, you're going to train them to use AI, that's a little tough because their job can be replaced. So you got to really, it all depends on the use case. But, at least for my managers, they know that they're starting to see the benefits of using it, and they're having less stress of tracking stuff and doing all that. And just, it kind of was infectious because they're all like, now we don't have to have that 9 o'clock meeting anymore. We just send our briefs and we just read it, and it's that 9 o'clock meeting doesn't exist anymore. And they love that. That was a big push too.
So you've been able to kind of work on some of the meta processes around this employee communication. I mean, I think that must be, not like a carrot and stick, right? But it's basically like this has to be win-win for people to really be happy about it. And we are hearing some stories like that. Like, maybe we'll hear some cautionary tales at some point. We can come back and talk about that. But I have another question, and I think Drew, you on the kind of the tool building side will have experienced this some, and I want to hear Jeff's perspective as well on kind of the necessity of having that documentation that you talked about, Jeff, having that be correct. So you talked a little bit about the documentation build you're putting that and the physical build kind of on equal footing, which makes a lot of sense to me. I was just at a fiber conference or a broadband conference, and a lot of the fiber contractors and consultants were talking about how, you talk about plant that's maybe 30 years old, and the documentation has gone through multiple generations of systems and may often not be correct. Are there ways that we can use AI to help validate that? Does the physical build match? Or is this a case where we're always going to have to go do some prep work to make sure that the AI has good data? Maybe you first, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's all in what you put into it. So if you go just compare this, it's going to just, think of everything. So the more data you're able to put into it, you're able to really compare and visualize the difference of things. So yeah, we've noticed it all. We were already pretty data driven company already, so it was a pretty easy thing to be able to input our data and it start to know our work processes and our checks and balances, and it adapted. So we're able to make agents for specific tasks to be able to compare. So historically, comparing, let's say, do we have the latest version of the CDs? Because there's been 5. Well, no, it found there was a 5.13. And so it knew, and it told us what was the difference of between all the CDs as it grew. So we actually knew the story of the whole process. It says, okay, the trench went from 120 to 300 because we had to go completely around the other side of the compound, and it has to go outside. And then now it's instead of 100 amp, it's 200 amp service. So we need three og wire. So it able to compare that and see the differences, and it helped us adapt ourselves when we're doing work and knowing how it adapted it as well. So in the field as well.
So you're able to analyze existing documentation that you have. Yeah. Drew, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, as frequency is the lifeblood to fixed wireless, data is the lifeblood to AI, and it will only give you what you put in. We find many cases where we chase our tails because of something that we put into the guardrails that was inaccurate. So we spent a lot of time first on the data-driven decisions, KPIs, build-outs, verifying data. And even with that, even with walkthroughs, I mean, we sold internet to, because like our goal was to have automations in place between every touch point our customer ever does, so we don't have to do manual work. And then we sold a house the other day off of our shopping cart online that GPS maps it to a location that isn't there. So like now we're like, okay, so guardrails in place. How do we? I sold a house. I told them I was going to get them internet. We sent a crew there, and their house and GPS
The data was wrong.
don't equal because Google Maps is wrong. It's just not. You
Google
don't live
Maps is
here.
wrong
If
for
you
my
lived here, I
house.
could get you internet. But you do not live here, and so and that created a very big friction point. And bad reviews for us, and made us look silly. But how now? So like data is king, and so even with guardrails, you're still going to make mistakes. And I think a human would have done the same thing, because if you put it in there, like, well, it says we serve it. So, but then if you ask them, is this your house? They're like, no, we live a mile and a half down the road. Like, okay, so who do I call to say your house doesn't track right?
So it's like confirmations, like, here's a picture of the map. Is that you? If this
Yes.
map looks like you, yeah, I'm in the city and I have the same problem. Google doesn't have the right location for my address.
Agreed, right? And so I think to your point, the data is the lifeblood for the automations and tools, but it's going to be the same way if we were having a human in it. But one of the touch points that made me very interested in this panel was we have the intelligence at this day and age that we can actually. I think you said this. We can go back to being human. I want to hire for emotional intelligence more than intellectual intelligence. Not saying that you can't. Like intellectual intelligence is huge. But the interactions and the experience we provide to the customer, to be able to knock on the door, be able to communicate them on the phone, all of those things are more valuable in this day and age, because people are going to crave the emotional intelligence side of it more than you using big words that mean a lot of different things. It's not it. It's just, how do you make me feel about the experience that you provided me? And we really need to get to that and have all the tools available for our humans to augment.
I think that's a really interesting point, Drew, particularly if you think about what Nathan and Claude were saying just before you about the people who are opting to choose a bot experience. And I don't know that necessarily indicates, this is my theory, I don't know that it necessarily indicates a preference for human to machine interactions. It might be that they already felt dehumanized by the process of having to do a support call. And so maybe those who are maybe we're actually reducing the friction there, and that's not an activity that we want to do as humans. So just a theory. We'll have to see how
on that same note, we turned on our AI automation tools, and then it told us that we needed to put an AI bot to take 800 phone calls a month off of our plate. That would be less friction points. So turning on IVR bill pays, and then having our AI listen to those and see if they get frustrated. And it's very a small amount of frustrated customers on billing, because that's a sensitive subject anyway.
And then those are the people where you really want the human touch. So identifying that's is a really useful skill. Well, we do need to wrap up and move on to our next session. But I've really appreciated Jeff coming in and sharing your experiences, and Drew as well. Thank you very much for being willing to come and hang out with us for a bit.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay. Yeah. And anybody, you can still ask Drew and Jeff questions in the chat. We're going to move on to our next one. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Okay. We are going to go ahead. I'm going to do the intro here for our next session. Due to our next speakers being in Europe, this one is a pre-recorded talk. So we will not have a direct Q&A, a live Q&A, but feel free to submit questions for our speakers, and we'll make sure that those questions get to Hal and Björn. I'm going to go ahead and do that intro now. So we've got The topic is AI chatbots for ISP support. Nice lead in from what we were just talking about. And we've got Björn Evertegen Monclair. He's the VP of Network Intelligence at Cujo AI, former head of research at Domos, and has a PhD from the University of Oslo. His research interests are in queuing theory, distributed systems, and machine learning, with applications in modeling and optimizing real-world networks. And along with Björn, we have Hal Ponton, is chief architect at Vonius Broadband, a nationwide provider in the UK, delivering full fiber broadband to villages, towns, and countryside homes. Hal has also been a program committee member at the UK Network Operators Forum, board member at UK WISPA, and a senior network engineer at Buzzcom in the UK. So I'm going to get off stage and we're going to hear from them.
Hello, everyone. My name is Björn. I am a VP Network Intelligence at Cujo AI. And Hal.
Hi, I'm Hal. I'm the chief architect for Vonius. We are a hybrid fiber and wireless operator in the UK.
I think so. The whole topic of AI and chatbots in customer service for telcos, I think it's easy to get confused about where we are with that and why sort of the timing is right for doing that well, in my opinion. So one of the topics I think is very interesting here is that so obviously large language models are all the rage these days, and they've seen massive improvements in the last like weeks, months, certainly years. But I actually don't think that the sort of improvement in the LLMs themselves is sort of the real unlock for the customer service use case for ISPs. In my opinion, it's more of a sort of data story and making sure that the AIs have the right access to the data that is relevant to the customers is really the key thing that has been or is missing in a lot of cases to make this like a really good experience for customers. Because it's easy to sort of make a customer service agent, but if it doesn't have access to relevant information, then it's going to just give you the same list of sort of FAQs or like a checklist of things to try, like turning things on and off and running a speed test and stuff like that. Whereas if you actually have access to relevant information about specifically what is wrong with that customer's connection, then you can do really interesting things. So that's kind of to introduce. That's the point of view I'm taking on this.
Yeah, and I'm in full agreement with you there. I think there's loads of examples of AI chatbots that have got some fairly basic or even maybe some minor complexities around the prompts and the ethos or the mannerisms it's been given. But a customer to a certain point doesn't care if the wording that they're being fed is on brand. If they want to engage with an ISP, they're doing it either because they want to buy or they want to fix their problem. And for us, a lot of our AI enablement work hasn't been playing with LLMs because you're correct, Brian. It's sort of, you've got this almost daily, if not hourly, new release of features in the models themselves. Like Claude has a whole bunch of connectors that every time I refresh the apps list, there's another 4 or 5 that have gone in, but they don't do anything with my data model. They still hallucinate with FWA technology. They can still hallucinate with FTTP, and really it's being able to give it access to the infrastructure. So how do we know, is there an incident that is happening in that customer's area? So how do we go and access our network intelligence layer to see if there's something wrong? How do we run diagnostics on a customer's connection without resorting to a human to interpret those results? How do we resolve a billing query? All of that data is in various different places, and we kind of conform as much to TM Forum standards as we want to. So we have SIDs or sort of, we call them data gods, of where everything lives, and unless the agent has access to those bits of data, and more importantly knows how to go and search through that data and know the sort of ancillary data, then you end up in really poor customer service experiences. I'll give an example. When we were training our AI on broadband diagnostics, we kind of took the approach of, we'll feed it everything. We wanted to have access to everything, and we just threw a whole bunch of JSON arrays at the model and said, can you diagnose this problem for us? So it was an FWA sector pointing down the ridge of a mountain. Customers on one side couldn't see the other side. There was interference on one side of the ridge. We fed it the data, and the AI confidently came back and said, please ask these 5 customers to rotate their houses to face northwest.
That's a good one.
And it was our first kind of foray into AI, correlation versus causation, which I think is a big point that chatbots really need to be able to understand, whether that's a voice chatbot or a text. I can fully imagine, because I was doing it on my side, that, as a customer, going, what the hell are you asking me to do here? That's not going to fix my problem. I'm not rotating my house.
The
house is set. And so, this is a perfect example of, it had access to everything, but it didn't know what to do with that. So, I think, it's the data layer, it's the context layer, it's, how do you merge those two together? How do you take the raw data that the tools are telling you, and how do you apply that to something that you can actually tell the customer, and that's something that, if there are problems, that you can go back into the AI's history and go, how did you come up with that suggestion? Or how can we change that?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I think it's kind of maybe just rephrase or summarize maybe some of what you said. Like the AIs need to know which solutions are actually viable, and what can you possibly actually do. Otherwise they'll just make up something which might not be like what the operator wants to present, or it might not be something that's even possible, like the house example. It also reminds me of another thing we've run into, which is it's easy to sort of overwhelm the models with like too much data that is not really relevant to the issue. So I think one of the key learnings we've had is that it's really essential, both from a sort of actual like building solutions that work point of view, but also very much from the economics of it as well, to do some of the analysis that can be done like pre the LLM stage, kind of, or like before you feed the data to the LLM. You want to make sure that you throw away data that's not relevant, and sort of highlight the things that are relevant. And then, of course, it's at that stage, it's very important not to throw away the important stuff, which is also a super easy thing to do, because it's so tempting to like make aggregates or averages that really throw away the things that are relevant to the problem.
It's almost a bit of a change in learned behavior of operators. Of we all have networks that we love to collect data, because at heart, if you're crazy enough to get into telecoms, you tend to love data, and so we've built these data collection tools that collect every little bit of data, because we never know when it might be useful. It's the equivalent of every person's probably got a drawer full of cables that they'll never use again, but just in case they keep them. And this is really the case where this is not the important part anymore. So we've kind of done exactly the same as you for our diagnostics engine. So we have the AI has an MCP interaction with our diagnostic engine, and that collects all the data. It goes and analyzes it, and if it's within good thresholds, the LLM never sees it. We just say, it's okay, don't worry about this.
That's exactly the same.
We've got to fail in this sector. We're going to feed you the useful data. We'll feed you the trend data. We'll feed you the analytics that you can look at, and then you can go and just concentrate on this one thing. Everything else is fine, because as you say, the AI loves to be the smartest person in the room, and it will just continue to try and find every possible, go and find some weird article on Google that, or on the deepest, darkest places of the web that says, in certain, weather and humidity conditions, then this perfectly good fiber reading is actually not good, and it's not needed. It needs to just concentrate on the matter at hand and feed it back. And one of the things that we've also done to help our AIs understand and be able to justify their responses is something we've done when we were starting with AI, which is only feed me something that you can tell me based on peer-reviewed data. So don't go to a random blog post that tells you something. Go and look at peer-reviewed scientific papers. And so we've taken that model into our documentation. So our documentation is our equivalent of peer-reviewed papers. It's gone through our technology design board. It's gone through all of our subject matter experts. All of our processes have that documentation. So if the AI is going to say, or the LLM is going to say, this is the next step, then it needs to cite the bit of the documentation that it's following, and rather than guessing. So either in a case where you're using a chatbot to talk directly to a customer, in which case you need to not only cite the documentation internally, but you need to put that into language that the customer understands. Or if you're using a chatbot as an assistant to a live engineer who is using AI tooling to help them, improve average handling time on a call, or try and understand an issue that previously they would have to have escalated the issue, because this acts as a great training ground, or a great training environment to teach first, second line engineers what the senior engineers understand. I think that's kind of important, especially given that if you're in a learning situation, you need to be confident that the information that you're being taught is correct. And if you think that something doesn't seem right, you have the ability almost just click on a link and go and read the actual bit of the documentation that matters and go, okay, I feel comfortable, especially seeing as that frontline agent is putting their reputation on the line with the customer, and they don't want to be the person that's known to have lied or mistruth, even if accidentally, that they've said something incorrect to a customer.
And I guess by documentation there, you're talking about sort of a catalog of sort of incident reports and learnings from previous interactions, and what works, what doesn't.
So everything from the architectural documentation for how the platform is supposed to work, the design criteria, the operational manuals, and then I think every ISP has that weird collection of knowledge base articles that were written because one time 3 years ago something odd happened, and it's been documented. We also use access to previous ticket notes in our Salesforce environment to potentially say that this may actually not be a technical problem that you're solving, because if a radio is offline or an ONT is offline, never underestimate how many times someone can unplug the router to go and do the hoovering and never plug it back in again. And we've got documented so many different cases where the issue has just been customer plugged it back in again, or customer realized that they'd moved stuff around, or they thought that because it was wireless, it meant that they could just unplug it all and put the router on the top of the cupboard, and it would get better signal.
Yep. My cats unplug my Ethernet all the time.
We have an interesting one where we have a customer who is not allowed to move his wife's cactus plants. And so every time he bends down to touch the router, he ends up face planting a cactus. So we even have that kind of stuff documented in our knowledge bases. If you're talking to this customer, please tell them to watch out.
Yeah. No, it's fun to hear that your experience is so similar to ours. Like, I think because we're operating in slightly different, similar but slightly different domains. Like Kudro, we have the point of view that we have is from the home gateway exclusively, pretty much. So we have data collection agents sitting in the home gateway CPEs, and that's observing the internet connection from the point of, or as close as we can to the point of view of the actual end users. And then we're collecting we're basically doing a pre-analysis step on the CPEs to determine, like, is this something that's worth reporting or not, and then sending all of that data to the Kudro cloud, and then we from there, that's sort of the data that's fed into the AIs and that can be used for customer service. So it's and in our experience, it works really well because we have this customer point of view. when there is an issue, it's like it can be tied to the timing of the incident that the customer reports, and what I'm trying to say is it's so easy to sort of get stuck on things that aren't relevant to the end users.
Yeah.
With these things, like, and my favorite example there is a speed test, because you can run a speed test and you can test the connection, but if the customer had an issue with a Zoom call or something like 2 hours ago, then your speed test right now isn't doing anything to sort of affect that. But if you do have that data from the time at which the customer did have an issue, then that's something you can use to make sure to address their issue. And that's, I think, where the LLMs really are super useful, because it is like, it's possible for humans, of course, to like view a dashboard and see the incident and link it to the thing that the customer experienced, but it's also very challenging to make that so easy that it doesn't require like a lot of expertise, a lot of understanding, and some time to sort of get the context for each and every home, because they're all different, right?
The LLM is also,
and that's where they really excel, right?
The LLM is also really good at being able to ask those follow-up questions to try and really nail down what the problem is. So, most customers, when they phone up, it's like, the internet doesn't work. And you're like, okay, this is a really wide scale question. Can we narrow it down? And I think some of the learned behavior, or just human nature, really is to think that the last problem I had was a really complicated one. So the next problem I'm going to have is a really complicated one. And, LLMs are really good at going, let's just go back to engineering fundamentals. Like, is it plugged in? Can we start from there and work forwards? And, being able to see even a point of a graph that might look a bit odd to the human eye may just be the result of a collection issue with the equipment. The bit we have on top of your stuff is we've got that in home, and then we've got all of the infrastructure back to our core network, and then onto the internet as a whole, up into the DFZ. And so we have that same problem, but whereas you can kind of point to, this is our customer, this is our device, and so on, we have potentially 10 to 20 different devices that customer is transiting through on our network that we have to take into consideration too. So that data layer for us is even bigger. We've built a graph database we call Atlas, which is a mapped one-to-one topology of our infrastructure. So we can literally run a query and decide that this is the path that the customer's taking, and therefore these are the devices to go and look at, and then know what to discard, and then know what to interrogate further.
Yeah, really cool to hear that it works in that scenario as well. That's a thing that I've been thinking a lot about. Like, what can we do if we have more data points from the network deeper, for further up in the architecture. So but it's cool to hear that the experiences are very similar from there as well.
That's great. I mean, it's that the bit we've had to really struggle with, and not so much given some of the latest changes in LLMs, is context windows. That's something that is really important. Again, throw the data away, keep the context window.
Sounds like we need to.
I think we're at the end of our time.
Great to meet you, Hal, and great chatting. I'm sure we could have kept this up for a while.
I'm sure we could have.
Yeah, thanks again to Hal and Björn. It was a really enjoyable conversation. I've gotten to speak with both of those gentlemen before. In fact, Björn was a podcast guest, and I've met Hal at least once in Vegas, and he's a lot of fun, as well as a fountain of information. So really, really fun to pick his brain there for a bit. So we've got about 2 minutes before we're going to be on with Benny and Ryan. Benny Fallica from Nokia and Ryan Gruel from Nextlink. So I'm going to go ahead and get them going here and do some introductions. Thanks for the slide. Yeah, Tommy says, everybody lies. Thank you. Repeating me there. Welcome, Ryan, and welcome, Benny. It's good to see you both.
Good to see you.
Benny's a telecom professional with over 18 years of experience at Nokia, spanning business development, sales, strategic planning, and product management. Currently leads efforts to expand Nokia's broadband and home device business in North America. With his expertise in access technologies, Benny works closely with ISPs and enterprises to navigate deployment challenges and deliver innovative, scalable connectivity solutions. Welcome, Benny.
Thanks, Jeremy. Very nice
Ryan.
intro.
Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you. I just read what they give me, Benny.
That's very good. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ryan, it's good to see a familiar face as well. Lots of familiar faces today. We've also had some good times together in person.
Yes.
And Chief Innovation Officer at Nextlink, leading internet service provider serving communities across a dozen states. Currently leads innovation initiatives, including the development of Infara.ai, an AI solutions platform focused on telecom and adjacent industries. I'm curious what adjacent means. Ryan has driven the adoption of AI across network operations, customer experience, quality assurance, and automation, bringing a unique perspective that spans building, operating, and scaling real-world systems. Welcome, Ryan.
With a better introduction than I deserve.
Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm going to get out of your way and let you talk about reducing truck rolls, and I will be back in just a little over 15 minutes, and we'll have some Q&A. See you soon.
Fantastic.
That's good. Thank you. All right. So I guess I can. Is the slideshow visible for everybody? Yeah, I guess so.
Yes.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. And thanks for joining this session about reducing truck rolls with AI, with predictive maintenance and remote diagnostics. I wanted to be clear, and from the get-go, we don't think that AI will get rid of any truck roll. Sometimes that is the right answer, especially if you think about when the fiber gets damaged or you have maybe a failed amplifier or a power issue. The field team has to go. So no algorithm will change that. Unless we start dispatching robots, but that is a conversation for maybe a couple of years from now. So let's not think about right now. So as a vendor, we see the opportunity that AI provides to the service providers, specifically in the regional space. And we think that the main goal is to use AI to improve the customer experience with direct customer support and optimizing operations so that you can have this agentic troubleshooting that could translate in fewer avoidable dispatches. And also, we think that at the time of rollout, AI can play a preventive role because it can guide the installation and can automate the design. So if you get it right in the first place, you have less chances that something gets broken in the future. So Ryan, from your point of view, working for an operator, do you think that this view makes sense also in your
Yeah,
day-to-day?
I think it's the correct path, just from the standpoint that the best way to avoid a truck roll is on the front end. So before there would be a truck roll, do all the things that are right, and I think that's where AI really plays a part. I mean, from design, permitting, to we've even automated our 811 dispatch and 811, which is like the call before you dig programs, across our footprint, and we have seen a reduction in fiber cuts and things. But we're using AI to determine impact. We're using that information to analyze impact and possible hits, and that's helping us in our future design as well. And so yeah, I wholeheartedly not only agree with what's on the screen, that's the day-to-day life that we live at Nextlink.
Perfect. Okay, so as we move to this new paradigm of using AI as a tool, we already can build on top of what today a lot of operators are doing already, which is starting from all the signals, this big noise that your network makes. You have telemetry, you have alarms, you have KPIs, you have lots of data. So this is not really new for you. However, you recognize that the challenge is that when the volume is very high, then the signal are rarely clean, which means that you can miss sometimes whether if it's a one-time customer device issue or maybe it's a congestion pattern that can be avoided. So AI and AI power insights can really help to correlate those signals. So based on the data, you can start to detect anomalies. You can predict some degradation. In the case of installation, you can analyze images and validate if the cabling is done properly. And on top of this correlation, it's also the context. Because when you put all this data together in a context, then you might start to discover patterns. Think about specific node, weather events, or recurring ticket clusters. Everything will become more useful and easy to troubleshoot. And then in the cycle, the human operator, the human agent, it doesn't go away. And whether it is for providing better context to a ticketing or recommending a config change, the human operator always stays in the loop, especially for those higher impacts changes. Yes, AI agents can help to compress the investigation, but ultimately the operational judgment still stay with the human, with us. Would you agree also with this, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I call it basically going from reactive to proactive. It's sort of adjacent to what you're showing here. There's the car going down the road with the check engine light, and you just ignore it all the time for many months because it's always on, and then when something real goes on, you miss it. And we're using AI to go in and discern which check engine light to actually look at. And our network, for instance, we have over 40,000 devices that are part of the actual network, not the customer end devices. We have over 40,000 network endpoints. And we are using AI to help us be a lot more proactive and a lot more engaged with the firefight that is network operations and handling alarms. And we're able to have an average of 1.5 technicians on staff, basically in the network operations center 24 hours a day. And with the network our size, you would typically see 6 or even 8 folks. But because of doing exactly what you described with metadata and analyzing things that are coming down the pipeline, or looking at the alarms that are coming out, and then pre-staging dispatch or staging some sort of automated resolution using AI, we are able to cut the amount of people that need to be there and still have as good or better customer experience.
Perfect. So we said, like, not every predicted fault needs a truck, right? So AI can act more like sort of a triage model, right? There can be issue that they don't require visit at all. Some fixes that can be automatized, some reprovisioning that can be issued by the care agent, or just Wi-Fi tuning, or maybe it's just a simple reset. Now, that simple reset might not work all the time. And that's when, for example, AI can help in a guided assistance to the end user, especially knowing exactly what type of scenario is panning out would improve and would optimize the operation once actually that dispatch is required. And so AI would work also in that context, optimizing the team location, optimizing the tool, giving already a sort of understanding of the situation for the recovery team once they being deployed. And so, as you can see, AI-driven operation with this real data can really reduce troubleshooting ticket volume. They can improve mean time to repair, and also lower network OPEX potential. Less truck rolls needed, more savings for the operator. So if AI can manage to classify well enough all these issues correctly before a dispatch, we can reduce waste and we can save money.
Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on. And this is basically the flow that we're doing in our software. Like Jeremy had mentioned, we're building a system called Infara.ai. And that flow that you've got on the screen is exactly what we're doing. So anywhere we can remote fix, we're even tuning OSPF in the network. So whenever path is overloaded and we're on like a backup path and we have a tertiary route or whatnot, we're using AI to go in and analyze and send specific flows a certain way. And then we even have AI-based customer service agent that is a voice agent that's out in front of customers that can do everything from help you understand the taxes that are on your bill to walking through rebooting a fiber device or a wireless device. It understands the difference in technologies and what the customers have, walks them through that. And then if it needs to escalate, it escalates up to a team. And then we even have an AI-powered dispatch system that we call ASAP that allows us to discern the technical capabilities of our technicians, the job that is at hand, and then it'll smart route and even help them with the equipment that they need to have on the trucks and let them know specifically what they need, and it forewarns our warehouse. I mean, it's all AI driven, and I could have an entire team of people going and doing this, and there would probably be missteps, but instead it's a handful of AI agents that handle it.
Perfect. And Ryan, if you recall, when we were preparing for this webinar, we were talking about potential real use case scenario that we could bring, and I think I brought up just randomly this AI model that could correlate storms with actual asset, right? And that was totally random. And you say like, well, Benny, we are doing that. And so why don't you tell us exactly what Nextlink is doing? Because, storms are a great example because they expose this gap between prediction and operation. Because, okay, it is one thing to know that bad weather is coming, but it is another thing to know which assets are most exposed and at risk. So how you at Nextlink take AI power insights in this specific storm-aware context?
Yeah, so it's funny. I do remember that you had mentioned just kind of a use case kind of off the top of the head, but it makes sense, right? Leveraging AI to look at weather metadata and weather insights and kind of stage various crews and also predict network impact. And then it also helps us decide where network improvements or upgrades need to happen. So we have a system called Omni. It is our kind of unified platform for all things network. And it knows all of our sites. We have over 4,000 POPs in Nextlink, and then we know the weather, the metadata that's happening, and we record all of that in a time series. And then we also ingest all of the alarms that come out of our system. We use Zabbix for our network monitoring. And we line all of that up and then have an AI model that chews on that to basically say, hey, every time a storm of this severity comes through, this specific thing is an issue. And it goes and highlights this is what needs to happen. But also we get a breakdown of how many technicians are within whatever distance to a site, and it knows the drive time for all the technicians at all times. So whenever a site goes down, our automated dispatch happens and it goes out to a hierarchy of people. So on the screenshots you've got on the screen, I'll just kind of walk through those. The left side is a screenshot just to show the network assets and the weather that's over top of them. And then the middle is just kind of the front end that shows how many subscribers are currently being impacted by a network event, the number of technicians involved, where the stage is on each of those. It also shows how many sites are on battery versus grid power. If we have some mobile solar trailers that we'll drag out every once in a while in big events, and it'll show if any of those are on that, how many technicians are checked in at sites, things of that nature. So it's kind of a central hub for the network operations center to operate off of. And on the right, believe it or not, those teal dots are our active fleet vehicles that are moving. So there's two views you can have on with the fleet vehicles that are moving and one without. We have roughly 700 fleet vehicles in our current operation. And so we lay all of that information out, and instead of just having one system for each that you would go look at and say, oh, well, that's where the fleet is, and let me click back over here and see where the site is and try to line it up. We have an orchestration of agents that handle the entire thing start to finish, and that's why we were able to get to the low headcount in the network operations center to provide greater than 99.5 customer experience. uptime experience. And that platform leverages all the things that you hypothesized or were just kind of spitballing on. And it's been in production for about a year now, and it's taken us from like a 21-minute time window from an outage event occurring to the first call to dispatch to sub 5 minutes. And it's automatically deciding when a truck roll needs to happen versus when it doesn't, because it's learning as time goes on. It understands the resolution on every one of our outage tickets.
Great.
Hey, gentlemen, it's been a wonderful conversation so far, and I do have some questions for you. Maybe I'll grab this one first, Ryan, since you were just kind of talking about this this triage model. But you know, if you're thinking about trying to catch stuff in advance, do you have like a particular goal for how far? I mean, it's probably pretty technology specific, but do you have a goal for how far in advance you want to really be handling or anticipating a kind of an operational problem?
It really just depends on the problem, like you said, but I'll just give you an example. Some of it is learned after the fact, but we try to have 7 day out. We look at the weather, and we have a thing that we do called storm protocol, where we change our communications and we start to look at how we stage individuals. We change scheduling around based on storm protocol. So we're analyzing things like that we are out of our control. We can't control the weather.
Right.
If we could, we'd be trillionaires. But we constantly are looking as far in advance as we can. But the one example that I'll give you that is a little bit post-learned is that we had a site that would continually go offline, and we just weren't sure specifically what was happening. And our system had suggested that it was something to do with the weather, and but our weather system wasn't picking it up. And what it was is a guy had his sprinkler system flooding one of our enclosures, and it killed one of our fiber devices that was at one of those enclosures. And I think it was a weather-related, or not weather-related, but a failed seal or something on that enclosure.
That's a microclimate weather.
Yeah,
right there.
every time that
At
it
the
was
pedestal.
extremely dry and hot for an extended period, this thing would die, and it would come back later. And it was just, hardened enough that it would come back to life whenever it dried out. But we just couldn't quite figure that out. And AI, it's like, yeah, this is an anomaly.
Detection of pattern there.
Yeah, it detects the patterns and then lets you know, hey, this probably needs eyes. And that's, we're even doing frequency analysis and all sorts of things to make sure we're not self-interfering. But that's
Right.
the type of patterns that we're looking for.
Yeah, that's definitely less predictive for sure.
Yeah.
Looking at historical patterns. And maybe my next question is for you, Benny, if you want to take this one. So, rural networks often have like aging infrastructure. So does that make predictive AI harder to implement when you, for example, if your documentation or your data collection is incomplete, or does it actually boost your ROI because there's more to catch?
Well, it could be. It's a good question, but I would say that the incomplete information is something that regional operator, rural operator would have to deal with, even when, for example, their best employees retires, and that information is gone.
It leaves a knowledge gap and a wisdom gap, right?
Exactly. So now AI can be a tool to allow that knowledge to be alive, to remain alive, even when your key employees naturally either they leave a company or they just retire. So in that case, I would say that it creates more opportunities, and the ROI is definitely much, much higher.
How do you
I'm
get
not
that
saying it's easy.
information out of their heads, though? What's the way of really capturing that information?
So that still requires the collaboration tools, having common documents that can be accessible by the AI tool that starts to collect the data. Now, the hard part is obviously how do you convince somebody to leave out knowledge if the promise is that maybe it will get replaced by the AI, right? So
yeah, we
you
talked
have
about
to
that a few times today already.
yeah, so you have to work in ways that you don't see AI as a threat, but AI as maybe reshuffling function, reshuffling jobs, and not just stealing knowledge that otherwise will be lost anyway.
That's a really good perspective, Benny, and I hope that's one that people can really learn how to adapt to. You know, we talked about different reactions and different responses to it. It's really a work in progress to understand how to really capture the human side of these effects, these knock on effects. Time for one last quick question, and this one is probably for both of you, but I'll start with Ryan. Yeah, no, but it's from a quote from you, Benny, where you said, network makes big noise, right? We're generating a lot of data. Here at Preseem, we're capturing trillions of metrics a day. It's a crazy amount of data that's coming in, and for Ryan, like the pattern recognition side of things, there are already a lot of like traditional data analysis techniques that are cheaper than, you can't just throw everything into the context window of an AI, for example. So are you finding that you're managing that ROI more carefully, or that you're using AI to like combine traditional techniques in new ways? I mean, I don't want to really lead you on this question, but like, how are you, given that AI can be expensive if you use it improperly, how are you solving these kind of cost-related problems?
So a couple different things. This could be its own panel in and of itself, probably.
For sure.
But we have our own on-prem processing. So one of the benefits of the scale of Nextlink is that we have access to a large amount of resources. So we have our own GPU cluster, our own Kubernetes cluster that is, our data warehouse, our data lake, and with medallion structure and all of that. So, but sort of more of the same, sort of like what you're talking about. We've taken some existing know-how, and then we will use that to condense as much of the results as we can, and then feed that into an LLM and go and just kind of, I call it distillation, but kind of distill it down into the easiest, most consumable method. Actionable insights are so much better than just noise, and the problem is so much AI is just creating noise, and so we're constantly working on better prompting, better prompt engineering, better distillation. At the end of the day, if we can get a 5% bump in usability in any one of our tools, that is, it's just massive over a year period. And so we people are coin operated, so we'll reward folks that go and improve our processes and make suggestions that that do make us better with the right coins, and that pays dividends at the end of the day. I think there's so much more there that we've got to do yet, but we are. I'm really proud of where we are, is what I'll say.
Fair. Well, thank you for coming and sharing with us, where you are in that journey. And this has really been great to hear over both of these days, these perspectives from people at different stages. And you've certainly been kind of early adopters there, Ryan, at Nextlink, and it's been wonderful to hear from you. And thank you, Benny, as well, from Nokia, coming and sharing with us. We're going to head on to our next session here, and I just wanted to issue one last thank you for joining us and participating in this summit. Thank you.
Thanks for having us on.
Thanks.
See you soon. Okay, we are now welcoming, let's get our next session up. This is the next shift in ISP operations. This sounds like a fun predictive panel. We've got Ken and we've got Larry. Let's see here. Ken Garnett, we spent nearly 2 decades as co-founder and C-suite leader of Cal.net, rural broadband provider serving thousands of households across California. During that tenure, he held nearly every executive role, secured over $120 million in broadband funding, and completed 5 acquisitions. After retiring from Cal.net at the end of 2024, Ken founded BeyondChat.ai, an AI orchestration consulting practice for organizations ready to move beyond chat-based tools into AI that completes goals, not just answers questions. Ken's a certified AI consultant and Mind Studio Level 3 certified AI agent developer. That's a mouthful, and it sounds impressive. Continues to serve Cal.net as a part-time strategic advisor and secretary of the board. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you, Jeremy.
And Larry Weidig, passionate about advancing the broadband industry through both technology and dialogue, with 25 plus years of experience spanning ISP ownership, network operations, and software development. I'm sensing a theme here, guys. It brings a unique perspective to broadband challenges. As founder and former president of Excel.net, understands the operational realities facing ISPs. Now, as a technical product manager at Sonar Software, he helps build the platforms that power broadband operators worldwide. Also a co-host of the Bandwidth podcast, where he and his fellow hosts deliver honest insights about what's really working and what isn't in broadband deployment, regulation, and operations. And I can give a plug for that. That's a great podcast. So, gents, I'm going to get off stage here and come back in about 15 minutes for some Q&A, hopefully. So see you soon.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you. And thank you to the Preseem team for having us. We're your closing session. You've had 2 days, nearly 6 hours, and a lot of excellent content.
Yeah, there really has been a lot to absorb, and there have been some really excellent sessions. I unfortunately haven't been able to sit in on all of them, but I have been in on a lot of them. And, thanks again to Preseem for putting this together. But today, Ken and I, we're not here to summarize it.
Now we're here to connect it together. So every one of these sessions you've seen has been excellent. Each one went deep on a specific AI capability. Might have been churn prediction, or support chatbots, or truck rolls, workforce augmentation. You've heard about a variety of ways that AI technology can assist ISP operations. And each one tool, one workflow, one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and all of those have been excellent. Every one of those definitely worth implementing on its own. But again, I think that's not the question that you and I are going to try and answer for them today.
That's right, Larry. We're here to tell you what we've noticed watching them. What we've noticed is nobody has asked the question that's been hanging in the room the whole time.
So every one of those sessions that you've hopefully all been able to attend and watch, every one of them described a smarter piece of a puzzle. Maybe it gave you, better signal. Maybe it provided for you a faster alert, or maybe even a sharper model.
Yeah, and what nobody asked really is what the picture looks like when those pieces connect. That's what this session is about. Not just another tool. It's what changes when you stop collecting tools and start designing systems. But here's the sharpest idea that we can give you today. Every tool you heard about this week answers questions. Then it waits, and you ask, and it responds. Then it returns to standby. That's really useful, but it's a different category of system than what we're describing here today.
So let's see if we can't just put this in some simple terms. We've got the chatbot, and we're all familiar with those. In fact, everybody's probably used those. You ask the question, is my service down? And it answers. The agent, however, it takes a different approach. It says, why is this subscriber having trouble? Can I fix it before they call? The agentic system takes this goal. We give it the goal. Let's resolve level 1 issues before they escalate. Then it goes on and executes the steps. It's going to do the triage. It's going to do the diagnostics. It's going to do the response. And if necessary, it's going to do the escalation. It's going to do those without waiting to be prompted each time.
That's right. Systems that complete goals, not just answer questions. And that's not a feature upgrade. That's a different architecture entirely. So let's make this real. An example, subscriber support, something every ISP on this summit deals with.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is far too real for me. I had to live in this loop for many years. So let's take some time and walk through it.
So step one, a signal comes in. It could be on the network side, or it could be a subscriber contact.
The second step is obviously the triage step. We need to determine, is this some isolated event that we're dealing with on a single subscriber? Is this a pattern that we're seeing? Do we expect to see our support staff opening 50 tickets on this very soon?
Yeah, and step three, run the diagnostics that a tier 1 tech would run, not just the easy ones, all of the diagnostics.
And then step four, which you might find surprising, is the proactive outreach. The subscriber hears from us before they pick up the phone angry.
Yes, and step five, if it needs a human, the escalation arrives to the human with everything already assembled. There are no cold handoffs. There's no explaining or re-explaining things.
And then we get to move on to step 6, where we confirm the closure and that loop is complete.
Exactly, Larry. And this is called the agentic harness. Notice where the human entered. It's at step 5, not at every handoff. At the moment, judgment was genuinely needed. No more manual cutting and pasting between tools along the workflow. So Larry, you actually lived this problem. When we talked earlier, you told me there was one specific handoff in your Excel.net days that cost you more than any other. Why don't you walk the audience through it, please?
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Ken. So definitely, I ran, as Jeremy introduced me, XLNet for 25 years. We were a regional ISP located in Wisconsin, and probably the same scale as some of you listening right now, maybe smaller than some of you who are listening right now, but we lived inside that loop that Ken and I just went through every single day. We just didn't have that exact language for it. There was nothing that we could refer to as the agentic harness. We lived in every one of those 6 steps, at some point. And obviously the most expensive handoff for that was, where the context didn't travel, where these steps lived in sort of an isolated event. So, the concrete pattern, and, this probably is going to make some of you who have lived in the support world shudder, is, you get that subscriber and they call in and they're frustrated because they're having problems with their service. And tier 1 answers the call, runs through all their questions, runs through that checklist of things that they need to do to try and solve that issue for them, and then they escalate it. Later on, your tier 2 picks up that ticket. They start asking similar questions, probably just at a deeper level, and hopefully to a higher skill set, trying to resolve that. Now, by the third time your customer or subscriber has to explain that issue, they are just not annoyed at this point. They've probably already started looking at your competitors. Fast forward this problem, and you end up on your churn report writing, customer service issue. You close it, you file it, you move on. Every one of those reports, though, trace back to a similar moment. You had context that didn't travel with the escalation. And most importantly, you didn't react on it proactively. So it ended up being, 30, 40 minutes potentially of support staff time working on the issue. It isn't the true cost. We all know that the true cost was that 24-month subscription that we just lost 6 weeks later when they do move to your competitor. And that's why step 5 on that slide that we showed of the agentic harness is not just about customer service improvement. It's also a retention mechanism for you. So what does this shift? Once you can have something like this in place for your regional ISP, I say there's 4 things. The first is that you don't anymore have these cold handoffs. When escalations happens, the human gets the context. It's not just a simple re-explanation, or it's time for tier 2 to start working on it. The work's already been done, and that's one of the things that we felt hardest when we were an operator.
Yeah, Larry, and then it's being proactive, not reactive. And this is arguably the most important point. The subscriber hears from you first before they notice a problem. That changes the customer relationship entirely. Or maybe they don't even need to hear from you at all because you fixed something before it became an issue. And then there's cross-function reach. The same orchestration logic that works in support can also work in the NOC, it can work in sales, it can work in field ops. Agents don't respect org chart lines. And human judgment is reserved, not eliminated, reserved. That's a feature, not a compromise. So here's the decision every operator in this room needs to make deliberately. Because if you don't, the system makes it for you accidentally.
As we see on the top one, the accidental design, that is certainly not the goal here. You don't want to end up with that bot making a phone call when it shouldn't, or sending out an email saying, hey, we resolved your issue, when you still got an issue going on. Equally as bad as you can't, in this day and age, afford to have that human approving every step. You should have a well-designed system that can handle that. And I would say both of those would be what we would consider failures of intent. But the second, and what we're promoting here is, an intentional design, and that's very different. Identify where human judgment, and there are definitely places in this process where human judgment is irreplaceable. And so build this handoff for exactly that moment. Not as an afterthought, but as part of your architectural decisions. The question is, where does the human stay? Don't make that your afterthought. It's part of your AI implementation.
Yes, Larry, and it is the first design decision. So here's the design principle that we want to leave you with.
2 questions, completely different solutions.
The old question, which AI tool should we add next? That question leads to a collection, a pile of solutions. Each piece solves something, but nothing connects.
And the new question, the one we want you to take away from this is, what outcome do we want to own? And where do we have to have the human stay?
That is the question that leads to a system designed backwards from a goal. This is called harness engineering, not prompt engineering, not context engineering, harness engineering. Human in the loop by intention, not by accident.
Those are 2 very different systems. The old question versus the new question, they end up with 2 very different sets of purchases, and I guarantee they will give you 2 very different results. So we've spent 2 days accumulating all those puzzle pieces. We've had so many good presentations, and some of them can be put together to solve each of those parts of this harness engineering that we talked about. Now you got to take that real inventory of those tools and what they can do for your ISP.
Yes, Larry. So here's our invitation. When you wake up tomorrow morning, don't ask which tool to add next.
Instead, start with one loop, one pain point, one trigger, one decision path with one measurable outcome. and then orchestrate that, measure it, and expand.
And that is the shift from collecting tools to designing outcomes. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Ken. It was good. So we are now happy to answer any questions that may have come up during the presentation.
Thank you very much, both of you, Larry and Ken. I really enjoyed you walking us through some really good advice here. There's the voice of experience behind it for sure, and I do have some questions. So this one is, I think it's really for both of you, and let me see if I can phrase it succinctly, if possible. You talked originally about determining whether where the human stays. That's really, it seems like a lot pins on this, and I love the fact that you're really introducing this idea that we need to figure out this harness engineering. These are decision points that are going to be critical to how you, not just how you deploy AI, but it's how you manage the entire org, the business of what you do, the interaction between your business logic and human productivity and AI productivity. Like this is the nexus. And is there a way to, because I feel like we're hinting at this, but is there a way to decide where the human needs to be in the loop other than the school of hard knocks? Right? We've heard from people over the last couple of days, like, we've seen good chatbots and bad chatbots. Obviously, the bad chatbots are a way to learn this, via the school of hard knocks. Is there a way to do this that you found where, because this is kind of a new field. We expected people to use manual tools and still be very much the human in the loop. Since the human in the loop is still hypercritical, how do we find out where to keep the human in the loop today?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeremy. The first inclination is just to be everywhere in the loop, right? Examine every.
Does that scale though, Ken?
But, right, it's exactly. You can't do that at scale. It's what I call verification collapse, right?
Because you're generating so much content, but you don't have a way to review it. The human becomes the bottleneck.
Yeah, the humans become the bottleneck, right? Agents can do more and more and more, but you can't keep up with it. So you have to design intentionally, right? You have to design what the scope is. You have to figure out where the important governance points are, right? And you have to decide what the agent can do autonomously with checks and feedback and internal cross verification of its work, and then send that on to the next step in the harness, right? And then intentionally design where it is that a human actually has to evaluate the result. But the important point is, when you design the harness, you put something in there that is self-governing, if you will. Checks for problems with, checks for guardrails, right? Problems with context bloat, checks for hallucinations. You might have multiple agents that check each other's work, right? One agent produces an answer, another agent checks the answer to make sure it's correct, and then informs the first one if it's not correct, and then sends it on through the harness to the next step.
So this seems like a combination of quantitative and qualitative decision.
Yes.
Larry, any thoughts about this?
Yeah, so I mean, what I've found, is really, and we've heard so many people say this, you have to have good process documentation when you're starting this process. It's the old adage of garbage in, garbage out. So if you don't understand your process, you're not going to find that exact point where that human needs to be. So, you look at your whole process. We've all used these tools at this point often enough to know then when we break that down into the steps, where the steps are that the AI will be good at. And if you're not sure, then you need to be sure of that, because this harness engineering only works once you can build up that trust and that you've got those individual steps. To me, it always surfaces like very clearly, this is the point where I need to intervene, because if I don't, it could just iteratively continue going off the rails, and even worse things are going to happen. And that's what you don't want.
So it feels like for a while at least, there's a combination of like human judgment when you're validating a particular stage and saying, is this a problem that we can get high enough quality output from? So there's still human involvement there as you're deciding, and it sounds like it's fairly granular too, right, Larry?
Yeah, I mean, you've had that human judgment right as you build these pieces, and yet, everybody that we've heard talking, in the last couple of days, as they built those pieces, I guarantee there was a lot of human judgment involved before you've turned it over. So, but now we've got a lot of these pieces, and we know that they're good, so we can start putting those together into this harness to give us even more effective solutions than just any one of those individual tools on their own.
Yeah, and when you put together a harness, you can't just toss it over the fence and think it's going to last forever, right? Everything changes so quickly in the space that you got to revisit that from time to time and see, did your business change or did the technology change? Combination, and then readjust.
And that's a really good summary of what we've been hearing over the past couple days. I've got just one last question for you, since this is, we're really trying to be forward looking here. Beyond customer support and operations, like, is there an area, and beyond, like, we're producing documents or we're using the summarization capabilities of LLMs, kind of the things that we've been hearing about for a few years. Are there other areas of an ISP's business that agents could create transformative value that you feel like people aren't talking enough about yet?
Yes.
Maybe you first, Ken?
Absolutely. Marcom. I don't think we heard anybody talk about Marcom, right? Using
How do you spell that?
Marketing communications. It's a shortcut. Marcom, right?
I thought you were talking about a communications business.
No, using agents to put together hyper-localized marketing materials. Every geography is different, and marketing people put together brochures and social media posts and videos maybe, and all kinds of stuff, but it's very generic and it's business wide. But with AI, you can hyper localize it to every different community, and and you can put out dozens of these a week instead of one every month or two.
Larry, any thoughts?
Yeah, that is definitely a great second use. Like I said, I didn't see all of the presentation, so I hope nobody did this. And I'm just saying, oh, this is a new area.
It'll be worth saying again.
But I think scheduling, some sort of automated scheduling, and the harness to take that is something that at this point it could be very good at. It can make all sorts of decisions. It's pretty hard for me as an individual to look at 400 installs and where they all are and find out what's the best one to. And some of those are pretty deterministic problems, which you don't even need. That's the other thing, is make sure you need AI to solve some of these problems. I see people throwing AI at tools that are completely solvable through deterministic processes.
And somebody used the term AI shaped problems, and I think one of the things I've observed the past couple of days, we do have a session exactly on several sessions that talk about it, Larry, and I encourage people to go back and see those on optimizing truck rolls, which is a really great operational improvement that you can make. And I think that it's the ability to like build these agents and agents to build the harnesses and ways to keep people involved here and produce good quality output. They're getting people thinking about problems that aren't AI shaped, even in more creative ways. So it's hard to say that there are no problems that can't be improved, but it might just be improved in a different way than people were thinking on that side of it. Yeah, Calvin Schultz says using AI in marketing is huge for a small ISP because you can build a lot of Facebook posts and schedule it. That's a yeah. Thanks for that observation, Ken, and for you as well, Larry. Well, we do need to wrap up, and don't want to keep people too much longer past the past our sell by date. But I really thank you for coming in and being our final set of panelists here. And I appreciate your observations, your expertise, and thank you for spending time with us today, Larry and Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been great.
Enjoyed it.
I did that. Yeah.
We'll see you soon, I hope.
All right.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Dan, welcome. I don't hear you. You're muted. Classic. I think you're muted. There you go. Perfect. Actually, I think you might be the first person other than my camera problems. We've had almost no technical problems these past couple days, which has been amazing.
Yeah. So this last session is just going to be a quick little roundup after 6 hours of talks we've had now, spread over 2 days. So I mean, lots of interesting things. Guess what did you take away from it, Jeremy?
It's going to take me a moment even to collect my thoughts. I'm over the past couple of years, I've definitely felt like what's the term where not future shock, but I'm a technologist. I've always been on the cutting edge of adoption, and AI in particular feels like maybe the first thing where I didn't really want to be on the forefront of it. And I really wanted to see some of the chaos settle down, some best practices emerge, and people begin to use it. And
was that because of understanding, or it was moving so fast? I saw a joke on LinkedIn the other day: is the only people that can keep up with AI are unemployed. The amount of hours in a day you need to keep up.
That's not necessarily a bad abstraction. It's definitely one of those cases where being an early adopter has you've contributed to this machine, but now we're starting to see significant improvements in the meta aspects of understanding what these things can do for you. Because initially I looked at it and was like, it's a statistical predictor, and I'd much rather use a traditional tool, right? However,
I think for me the switch before we get back, was once you started to see tools. Like when it was just a text predictor, it was not interesting to me. And then when the whole tool and MCP stuff started to happen, it became clear, I think, at least for me, and
your excitement
material.
It was contagious. You started showing some things that were possible. And, that had to be 18 months ago or so.
It's been a while.
And for me, it's the past 6 months that have really kicked off. I'm doing often multiple new projects a day, multiple apps, just building, and the tools are getting better and better. So I feel empowered and less a bit like, oh, this is a revolution that's for the young or the unemployed, as you might say, Dan. Right? If you're too busy to learn the new tools. And I love hearing from, we've got to actually have a question that we should take here that's relevant. I love hearing from operators who are saying, whether or not this produces any reduction in workforce, we must empower our employees to be able to use the tools. And that means that some people will be tool builders, some people will be tool users. That has always been the case. That doesn't change. We have a question from Natalia Cortez Barb. It says, it seems like eventually we're going to have less, better, more expensive employees. I'm not sure that feels like an assumption to me, but let's talk about that. Long-term in rural WISP areas, how will we keep staff or train when this is such a novel field? And how do you grow talent? That's an amazing set of questions. And I want to add one more topic to that, which is we've been talking about this, and I've been talking with ISPs in general about this, is if we make this shift to where tier 1 support is something that you now learn from the bot, rather than something that you learn from experience on the job and from
over
the
a
experience
long period of time.
well, also that you're learning from the tier 2 and tier 3 from their experience as you escalate a problem to them because you can't figure it out, and now you've gotten a feedback loop on it and you grow. How do we train tier 2 and tier 3 if we don't have tier 1 anymore? So that's a bunch of questions, Dan, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that whole set.
Yeah, I think anybody's prediction on what's going to happen with unemployment is probably not that useful at the moment because it's really hard to know. Like some people think that this is going to be just going to make everybody more productive and lift all boats. Other people think there's going to be mass unemployment. Some people think it's going to be mass unemployment and then it's going to lift all boats. And
we heard about that. We're saying the Industrial Revolution didn't. They had fewer people doing the old manual jobs, but new jobs were created.
So how that plays out, I don't know. But I do think the thing that you said there is interesting. Like and one of the things that Drew said with that too is maybe it more changes who we hire and the skills we hire for. Because like in your support example, if there is a bot that whatever AI agent, whatever it is that has some of that like hard won knowledge kind of trained into it or prompted into it or whatever that is, you don't need to hire the same people. You can hire people that are maybe a little more people focused, and that doesn't necessarily have to be a different number of people in your team, and that may just be the trend that we see everywhere. And how to keep them, I don't know. There's two ways this goes, right? It's like there's maybe there's a million ways in the middle, but right. If there's people may be doing more meaningful work if the AI bots and agents are taking more menial stuff away, and that could be a good thing. That could be really good for retentions and people's happiness. And if they get super smart and they take all jobs, then I guess we're all in trouble. So
I think I hinted at that as well. It's like people do search for meaning in their work, and we've already kind of shown that it's not necessarily replacing human judgment, but should be meaningful work. There is kind of a cautionary side of this too. If you hear writers like Cory Doctorow talking about what happens if you give this black box algorithm all the power and control, and then you put a human in the responsible position for making sure that mistakes don't get made. That feels like we're going to need some adjustment.
It's not necessarily someone just has to take responsibility, but not
well,
but not actually influence it the same way. Yeah.
Well, it's that you're going to get blamed, right? It's like
responsibility without the other side of it, whatever.
Without the other side of it, without the ability to really have a good feedback loop of when, when you're making the right decisions. And so, that's definitely, and nobody really dwelt on this too much. Nathan Stuck talked about it a little bit. Basically, you do have to own, if you're going to use these tools, you do have to own it. And I think that's
the accountability belongs with the human.
But then what happens when we start giving those jobs to agents?
Yeah, I mean, back to the employee side of things. Like, I think one of the things that Ian said on the first day was like, this is coming, right? Like, we don't get to choose basically that AI tools are coming and that they're going to change how we work and how all companies work. We only get to choose how we use them and how we adapt to that. So I think that's probably a really good message for everybody. Figure out what works and encourage people to get better at it. Many of the sessions today touched on workforce related things like how to bring it into your team, how to motivate teams to use it, how to put guardrails around. All those things are important, and they all are changing incredibly fast right now. How fast the models are getting, how quickly all the APIs and tools are changing around. Some of that is going to be universal truths, and some of it will look very different in a year or 6 months.
That's for sure. It is. I always keep thinking of Through the Looking Glass, where they're on the chessboard and they have to keep running and faster and faster just to stay in the same place. That's kind of that future shock that if you don't adapt, I think there's a way to kind of reduce the concern and fear of those who are maybe more resistant to change. We talked about that a few times over these couple days, and sorry.
Say take some of the risk away, like make it feel safer.
Right. And right now, particularly in the first couple of years of this revolution, the risk has not necessarily been countered by the costs, right? We know that external models are heavily subsidized right now. We know that eventually we're going to learn about the costs. Ryan Gruel from NextLink talked about how they've been building their own tools and data centers to be able to internalize those costs and make sure that they're picking the right jobs for that workload. I think that's really useful feedback that not everybody is getting today. Not everyone's going to be able to do it at that scale. So as we build tools, hopefully we can help make sure that we align the value, the ROI with the cost. I mean, maybe this is a good time to ask. Well, two things before I get to what we're doing at Preseem. I want to point out that we've thrown that future readiness survey link back up on the screen. Please fill that out if that's of interest to you. You will get some useful feedback from Ian's the system that he built there. And if you want to know what that's about, go back and watch that keynote session again from yesterday. Really worth catching. I enjoyed my conversation with Ian, as I've enjoyed the conversation with everybody. This is one of my favorite things to do. I don't have to prepare a deck, and I can just come and ask questions and have substantive conversations. I've really enjoyed it. So with that,
maybe one other thing we
yeah,
should touch on quickly
ahead,
too.
Dan.
Like the workforce challenges are really important, right? It's people matter. We have to be able to bring them along and make them productive. But the other thing that kind of thread that I think weaved through everything was back to the quality of data, and that was like not just the network data, like kind of stuff we were talking about, but run books. Is your network documented? Is your support process documented? Like all those things they were all best practices forever anyway.
But they might have been implicit.
But they were implicit. Yeah, maybe it was almost like kind of good enough that it was in people's heads or partially written down. But once you have tools actually trying to like execute it, not in the instruction sense, but like kind of work on it, it really does force a level of accuracy and diligence that maybe we all should have had always anyway.
We should have. Yeah. It accelerates the pace at which we would have needed to do this, because now it's like we don't have the luxury of training somebody over 6 months. We have to train this agent to do this in a week, whatever it might be.
I mean, it's not just it's a training thing. It's if there's nothing there to reason over, you're going to get garbage output, and if what's there is wrong, you're going to get wrong output. So
and that's the data correctness side.
So much back to the process documentation, data quality, data normalization, like all that is it's foundational to everything. So if you're looking at where to start, you can probably start that without like you can have people on your team start working and documenting processes. Right. They don't have to know anything about AI. Yeah. It's just a good thing to do. You're going to need to use it anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, we heard that off the hop yesterday, which is the model is not the bottleneck. The organization's the bottleneck. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about both the data side and the procedure side. That's a really useful insight, Dan. And that we kept hearing that echoed throughout as people were giving their sharing their experiences, even without having nobody colluded on their presentations ahead of time. So really got a broad sense.
There was no sharing, guys.
There was no sharing. We didn't tell anybody what to say. So it's nice to hear some of these resonances that we were already talking about, Dan.
Yeah, for sure. Great. Well, anybody else have any questions you'd like to drop in the Q&A? We'd really like your feedback. This was like obviously the first time we've tried to run something like this. The format kind of being the slightly tighter 15-minute, 5-minute questions with 2 people. We're kind of going for some interactivity, not just a bunch of talking. I like talking to slides and stuff, I mean. So I appreciate any feedback, and you can let us know if it was a good format, a bad format, too long, too short. All of that's very useful because I hope we're going to do another one of these again.
Oh, I hope so too. Yeah. Tell us your likes and dislikes. It's been really fun to get to know some new folks in the chat, as well as see some familiar faces. As I said, I've just thoroughly enjoyed every minute of it, and it's been really great to be here. Dan, anything at Preseem that we should be talking about before we sign off?
So, I mean, obviously we're spending some time in this area too, like everybody else. We have a lot of data that we've built up over years with all of the hundreds of ISPs we work with. And a big part of what we've always done is normalizing and cleaning that data so that can become actionable. So that's the foundation of what we're building, primarily at the beginning, putting that towards support use cases where we think we can have the biggest short-term impact. But yeah, if you're interested at all in kind of what Preseem does, what data we have, and what we're going to build on top of that beyond all the things that we already do of helping people operate proactively before AI was a thing anyway, which has always been our focus.
Right.
Even though everybody's talking about proactive now, that's been our company focus forever.
Singing our tune. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was statistics before. It wasn't AI. So yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. Happy to brainstorm this stuff. It's like super interesting. Jeremy and I and Scott and other people on the team. So if you're interested in talking, we just jump on a call and geeking out a little bit. It's a lot of fun too.
Fantastic. I don't think we have any more questions here. I think we answered everything that was submitted. Here's your last chance. We're going to wrap up soon. Get your questions in if you've got any or any. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Bobby. Bobby says it's an enlightening take on AI use between large and small, medium ISPs and their perspectives. Yeah, it's really been, I agree. That diversity of perspective has been really, it's been a wild ride. I really enjoy it. And I said, everyone's at different places on this journey. There's something for everybody here. Thank you, Jason, as well. Nice to see you. So yeah, over the past couple of days, we've covered a lot of ground in both the theory and practice of AI. If there's one takeaway, it's that AI isn't just coming soon for rural broadband. It's already here. The question is, are you going to shape how it works for your organization, or are you going to let somebody else make that decision for you? I just want to thank every speaker, every panelist. I mean, Dan already mentioned this, but just every one of you in the audience who showed up and you asked some great questions. You
And
stayed
on for a long time. There's a lot of people on
exactly.
for hours for the whole time. That's fantastic.
Amazing numbers. Yeah. So, and for my part, it's been an absolute pleasure being your host for this first ever. We hope this is not the last. Proactive ISP Virtual Summit. And as a reminder, if you missed any of the sessions today or yesterday, we'll be making all of those recordings available within the next couple of days. So thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, maybe just close on Matt said something earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Yesterday, I think it's really interesting. Like just kind of on the way out, kind of dropped the, AI is a tool like any other to make your customers happier. So it's figure out how you can apply it to make your customers happier and your business better. And I
heard that from more than just Matt.
Wonderful tool, but it is just a tool.
Yeah, I really did hear that from more than just Matt. Like, it really feels, nobody said, how can I use AI to make money? Maybe that's implicit, because if we don't make money, we can't stay alive. But they said, how can I make my business better, and how can I make my customers more happy? So that I believe is absolutely the right perspective to have. So,
all right, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time.